Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. Get ready for heart-pounding action, thrilling adventures with fresh and unique elements, a touch of romance, and a dash of harem. Everything you're craving is right here. We're excited to have you join us on this journey. So come along to Novel Love Hearing, we're waiting for you. As a small favor, please consider sharing Novel Love Hearing with your friends, family, in YouTube comments, on Discord, Reddit, or anywhere else you hang out online. Happy listening, and enjoy the ride. Peeking at him through her fingers. Ah, idiot. Give me a warning next time. Shin smirked but didn't answer, his focus already on their surroundings. Using his finely honed chakra control and the Mangekyo Sharingan's insight, he had started experimenting with a new technique, the Uzumaki's Kagura Mind Eye. It wasn't a jutsu, but an innate ability. The records he had found explained how those with strong Uzumaki blood could awaken it naturally. And thanks to the Uzumaki bloodline he had obtained, he had picked it up almost immediately. Even on his first attempt, he could sense everything within a 10-kilometer radius. Every enemy. Every movement. Every fluctuation of chakra. With this, he easily avoided patrolling ninja and wild beasts along the way, ensuring their journey to Hidden Leaf Village remained uninterrupted. And all the while, Kanako smiled softly, her fingers gripping his cloak. She had no idea where the future would take her. But for now, she was content. Because for the first time in her life, she had found someone she could trust. Chapter 24, Back to Village. Shin Uchiha, after traveling tirelessly day and night, finally arrived in Hidden Leaf Village not long after Tsunade and her team had returned from their mission. Using the influence of the Uchiha name, Shin easily gained passage through the village gates, bringing Uzumaki Kanako along without issue. Without wasting any time, he made his way to the Hokage's office. At that moment, the third Hokage was in the middle of greeting Tsunade and Uzumaki Kushina. Damn old man, hurry up and register Kushina already. I need to get some rest. Tsunade snapped, her tone sharp and impatient. Unlike before, she wasn't bothering to hide her hostility toward Hiruzen Sarutobi. Knowing what her master had done, she felt nothing but contempt for the aging Hokage. If not for their past master-disciple relationship, she wouldn't even have wasted her breath speaking to him. Hiruzen, sensing her unusual hostility, wisely chose not to argue. He knew Tsunade well enough, trying to explain himself would be pointless. He simply needed to wait for her anger to settle before attempting to smooth things over with his usual diplomacy. With the second shinobi war on the verge of breaking out, he couldn't afford to let a figure as influential as Tsunade slip through his fingers. If she walked away, the remaining senju might follow, and despite the clan's diminished numbers, their heritage still carried weight. Even a dying lion was more dangerous than most beasts. Turning his attention away from Tsunade, the Hokage smiled kindly at the nervous young girl beside her. So, you must be Kushina. I'm the third Hokage, but you can call me Grandpa Third. I'll arrange your registration and accommodations immediately. Before he could say more, Tsunade cut in coldly. She's staying with the senju. My grandmother will be overseeing her training. You don't need to trouble yourself. Without another word, she took Kushina's hand and led her away, not even sparing the Hokage another glance. Tsunade had no intention of letting Kushina be influenced by Hiruzen's usual smooth-talking ways. Watching them leave, the Hokage's expression darkened. Tsunade's grudge won't fade anytime soon. And now more senju are returning to the village. His grip on his pipe tightened in irritation. What the hell is Denzo even doing? He can't handle something this simple. He took a deep drag to ease his nerves, but before he could exhale, the office doors suddenly slammed open with a loud bang. Cough, cough, cough. Hiruzen nearly choked, barely managing to keep his seat. His initial thought was that Tsunade had stormed back in, but when he looked up, he saw a different familiar face, Shin Uchiha, standing there with a wide grin, and beside him, a red-haired girl who looked nervous yet determined. Yo. Old man. Shin greeted with shameless enthusiasm. Shin Uchiha. Hiruzen's eyes flicked toward Kanako. And this girl? Another Uzumaki? The striking red hair was unmistakable. Shin didn't hesitate, repeating the explanation he had carefully prepared. Didn't you issue that Uzumaki rescue mission? I tried to join up with Tsunade's squad, but by the time I arrived, Hidden Leaf Village had already fallen. I found Kanako near the battlefield and decided to bring her back. He flashed a grin. Since I technically completed the mission, how much are you paying me, old man? Hiruzen stared at him blankly. He had suspected Shin's sudden interest in this mission had some hidden Uchiha agenda behind it. But now, it seemed more likely that Shin had simply taken the mission for easy money. This little bastard probably wandered the borders a few times, stumbled upon Kanako by pure chance, and somehow lucked into completing the task. Hiruzen wanted to call him out on abusing his Uchiha privilege to accept an S-rank mission far beyond his official clearance, but in the end, He let it slide. Shin Uchiha was still his student, after all, and Hiruzen had always been generous to those in his inner circle. Besides, with war looming on the horizon, the village needed the Uchiha more than ever. Now was not the time to provoke them. When Shin casually mentioned taking Kanako under his care, Hiruzen's gaze flicked between them. He wasn't blind, he could see the way the girl looked at Shin, practically glued to his side. There was no doubt she had already imprinted on him. Hiruzen sighed internally. You sly brat. You went on a mission and brought back a future wife? Shaking his head in resignation, he approved the arrangement. If nothing else, it saved the village the trouble of assigning her a caretaker. After handing Shin his reward and finalizing Kanako's registration, Hiruzen quickly dismissed them. As soon as they left the building, they were immediately stopped. You little bastard. You actually went to Hidden Eddy village? Tsunada's voice cut through the air as she stomped toward him, eyes narrowed in irritation. How come I never saw you there? She looked ready to grab his ear and give him a thorough scolding, but after a second of hesitation, she refrained. She knew from experience that Shin had a habit of turning things around on her when she got physical. The last time she tried to hit him, he had somehow maneuvered it into looking like she was flirting with him. Annoyingly, she could never predict what shameless stunt he'd pull next. Instead, she folded her arms and frowned. You do realize how dangerous that was, don't you? To her surprise, Shin didn't joke back immediately. Instead, he simply smiled. Come on, Tsunada. You're my teacher, aren't you? Did you really think I wouldn't follow you? Something in his tone made her pause. She knew he was messing with her again, but there was sincerity beneath it. He had genuinely been worried about her. Tsunada found herself momentarily speechless. In this village, there were few people who truly cared about her. It was unexpected, hearing that from Shin. Of course, she wasn't about to let him off that easily. She quickly changed the subject. Then tell me, where exactly were you during the battle? The enemy suffered massive internal strife. Was that your doing? Shin merely smirked, neither confirming nor denying. At the same time, he subtly raised a finger to his lips in a silencing gesture, directed toward Kushina, who was standing behind Tsunada. Unfortunately for him, Kushina caught the motion and immediately narrowed her big, bright eyes at him in suspicion. Shin had the sinking realization that keeping his actions a secret from her might not be as easy as he thought. Chapter 25, Denzo and Hiruzen. As the granddaughter of the Uzumaki clan head, Uzumaki Kushina had mastered the Kagura mind's eye from a young age. She had sensed and memorized the chakra fluctuations of Shin Uchiha before. The moment he appeared, she recognized him instantly. He was the Uchiha who had saved them. After witnessing the destruction of Hidden Eddy village and enduring the relentless pursuit of enemies, Kushina had matured significantly. Seeing Shin Uchiha's subtle gesture, she immediately understood his intention. This was not the time to acknowledge him openly. Instead, her gaze shifted to Kanako, and a long-lost, radiant smile spread across her face. Kanako. I never thought I'd see you here. Kushina, it's you. Calling out each other's names, the two rushed forward, embracing and sobbing. Uzumaki Kanako and Uzumaki Kushina had been close friends. Their Uzumaki blood was not only their shared bond but also the purest and most potent within their clan. Seeing their emotional reunion, Tsunada and Shin Uchiha exchanged glances and chose not to interrupt. The four of them continued walking, conversing as they searched for a decent restaurant to have a proper meal. Not long after they left, a figure with a stormy expression arrived at the Hokage building. Shimura Denzo. The moment he stepped into the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, spoke in a grave tone, his face dark with displeasure. Denzo, you disappoint me. The operation failed, didn't it? Denzo's lips pressed into a thin line. He had no excuses, only an explanation. Yes, the mission failed. But not due to a flaw in my plan, an unexpected variable interfered. His voice was flat, but there was an undercurrent of tension. The root squad I sent was ambushed by an unknown force. I dispatched 45 men. Only 5 returned. The weight of those words settled in the office like a lead blanket. They reported that the culprit was an Uchiha, one capable of wielding black flame similar to Amaterasu. Hiruzen's brows knitted together immediately. Are you certain it was an Uchiha? For a fleeting moment, Shin Uchiha's image crossed his mind. But just as quickly, he dismissed the thought. A boy who had only recently awakened his Tsutomu Sharingan and graduated from the academy? It was absurd to think he possessed such advanced dojutsu. Besides, the Uchiha clan's movements were constantly monitored by the Anbu. To wield Amaterasu, one had to have awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. No reports indicated such an occurrence within the clan. Hiruzen's sharp eyes bore into Denzo. Are you absolutely sure it was Amaterasu? Denzo hesitated for a moment before answering, According to my men, it's impossible to confirm. One of the root members was struck by the black flames, but they eventually burned out. If it were truly Amaterasu, they wouldn't have been extinguished. I can only conclude that it was a fire-style technique mimicking Amaterasu. Hiruzen exhaled through his nose, his fingers drumming against the desk. So, someone wants to frame the Uchiha. His mind worked quickly. The Uchiha had no reason to be involved with the remnants of the Uzumaki. Their ties had long been severed. No, this had the markings of an external plot. Perhaps another village sought to stir internal strife within Hidden Leaf Village. Perhaps they hoped to use this incident as a pretext to justify an attack. Denzo nodded grimly, agreeing with Hiruzen's deduction. His own organization, Root, had eyes on all the key Uchiha figures at all times. It was inconceivable that one of them had slipped away to the ruins of Hidden Village. It's possible that another village staged this, Denzo admitted, his single eye narrowing. Or someone unknown is moving in the shadows. Hiruzen sighed, then leaned back. There is some good news, however. Denzo added. The assault on Hidden Village wasn't without consequence. The attackers suffered heavy casualties. How severe? By our estimates, at least 50 Chunin and 10 Jonin perished. Hiruzen's expression shifted, his eyes glinting. Good. A village's military strength was measured by its experienced ninja. Even Hidden Leaf Village, the strongest of the 5 great nations, had fewer than 300 Jonin. For weaker villages, the loss of 10 Jonin was a crippling blow. This will buy us time, Hiruzen said. For now, do not investigate Hidden Village further. Focus on the battlefield. The Hidden Rain has been growing increasingly restless. This Henzo of the Salamander has piqued my interest. Investigate him thoroughly, Denzo. Hiruzen's voice grew even colder. And as for the Sand Village, you know what to do. The tension in the office thickened, but Denzo merely nodded. The orders were understood. War was approaching, and there was no time to waste on distractions. The smaller nations, still recovering from the first Great Ninja War, had sensed weakness. Hidden Rain, led by Hanzo, seemed particularly eager for battle. According to Anbu reports, Rain's forces were preparing to march on the Land of Iron. And while these war preparations were underway, Shin Uchiha and Tsunade had parted ways, each returning to their respective clan estates. Uzumaki Kanako followed Shin Uchiha, timidly taking in the surroundings. He was her only remaining anchor. So she clung to his presence, following closely behind. Upon returning, Shin Uchiha led Kanako into the residence where he stayed. Kanako, from now on, this is your home too, he said. Take your time to settle in. I need to report to the elders, but I'll be back soon. Reaching out, he gently ruffled her hair, a small gesture of reassurance. Kanako nodded obediently, watching him leave before finally allowing herself to exhale. Now alone, she hesitantly began exploring the house. His kitchen. His bedroom. Her eyes fell on a set of recently discarded clothes. His clothes. Hesitating only for a moment, she picked them up, bringing them close to her nose. The familiar scent filled her senses. A warmth spread through her chest, a rare sense of security settling in. She let out a small sigh, then flopped onto the bed, burying her face into its softness. It smelled like him. Just as she was about to relax, a sharp presence flared at the doorway. Kanako's body tensed immediately, snapping her head up. A beautiful girl stood there, eyes locked onto her. Scarlet Sharingan spun lazily in her gaze. Who are you? Mikoto Uchiha's voice was sharp. And why are you in Shinkan's house? Kanako gulped. This girl, she was definitely Uchiha. I'm from the Uzumaki clan. Lord Shin brought me here. She stammered. Mikoto's intense stare didn't waver. But her tone softened, just slightly. The Uzumaki clan. Her eyes flicked downward. Kanako followed her gaze. She was still clutching Shin Uchiha's shirt. Mikoto's lips pressed into a thin line. And what? Mikoto said coolly, are you doing with Shinkan's clothes? Chapter 26. Hearing Mikoto Uchiha's question, Kanako's face flushed immediately. She averted her eyes and stammered, I was just about to wash it. Who even are you? Kanako seemed more confident when she thought of Shin Uchiha. However, Mikoto Uchiha scoffed and proudly declared, I am Mikoto Uchiha, Shinkan's future wife. If his clothes need washing, it should be me doing it. Without hesitation, Mikoto stepped forward and took Shin Uchiha's clothes from Kanako's hands. Hearing Mikoto's claim, Kanako's momentum instantly disappeared. Shin had never mentioned having a fiancé. But looking at Mikoto's confident expression, Kanako couldn't help but believe her. Seeing Kanako's sudden meekness, Mikoto felt a pang of guilt, realizing she might have been too harsh. Her tone softened as she held Shin's clothes and decided to strike up a conversation. Faced with Mikoto's questions, Kanako didn't hide anything and slowly recounted everything that had happened. While the two talked, Shin Uchiha was across the compound, noticing Shin Uchihaji in high spirits. Ever since Mikoto awakened the three Tomoe Sharingan, Shinji had been in a great mood. Before an Uchiha unlocked their Sharingan, their talent was measured by their ninjutsu prowess. But once the Sharingan manifested, that measurement became irrelevant. The number of Tomoe in one's eyes determined talent, and talent dictated status. Mikoto, who was previously just an average Geinin, had climbed to Chunin level strength within a month, all thanks to her fully matured Sharingan. Seeing Shin return, Shinji's mood brightened even more. Shin, you made it back safely. Next time you take on a high-risk mission or leave the village on your own, inform us beforehand. Shinji said, his voice stern despite his doting words. Heading to a dangerous place like Hidden Ecchi village. You should have had Uchiha escorts for protection. Shin shook his head with a small smile. Grandfather Shinji, I know how to handle myself. Besides, I didn't come back empty-handed. With that, he activated his three Tomoe Sharingan, deliberately revealing part of his strength. Shinji's eyes widened in shock. Immediately, he glanced around and signaled his confidants to seal the room. Once they were alone, he whispered, Shin. When did you awaken the three Tomoe Sharingan? During the battle at Hidden Ecchi village. Shin replied smoothly. It happened in the heat of battle. Shinji was overwhelmed with emotion. At Shin's age, he had only unlocked a single Tomoe. The fact that Shin had already reached 3 meant his talent far exceeded that of most Uchiha. And with talent like this, the Mangekyo Sharingan wasn't just a possibility, it was an inevitability. Don't reveal this, Shin. Shinji said gravely. Not yet. Hidden Leaf Village is already in a state of war. If word spreads, you'll become a target. Shin understood his grandfather's concern. But he had his reasons for revealing his Sharingan to Shinji. It was a power move. He wanted Shinji to see his potential and grant him more authority within the Uchiha clan. I understand, grandfather. I won't be reckless. But I also wanted to tell you something. I brought back a girl from the Uzumaki clan. Shin deliberately avoided mentioning her bloodline's secret techniques. After all, abilities like Kagura Mind's Eye and adamantine sealing chains were exclusive to the Uzumaki, impossible for outsiders to learn. Shinji frowned slightly. You're asking me to accommodate an outsider? Shin nodded. Even if she can't formally join the clan, I want her to have unrestricted access to the Uchiha compound. Shinji hesitated, but because it was Shin making the request, he ultimately relented. Granting an Uzumaki girl full Uchiha status isn't an option, unless she marries you. Shinji said bluntly. But I can approve temporary residency. Intermarriage with outsiders was rare in the Uchiha clan, but not unheard of. Temporary status was a loophole created for such individuals. Of course, to the Uchiha, these temporary members were always seen as outsiders. They weren't fully accepted by the clan. Not that Shin cared. He didn't want Kanako to be close to the Uchiha anyway. Most of them were prideful and extreme in their ideology. The only reasonable ones he knew were Mikoto and Shinji. After settling Kanako's situation, Shin asked Shinji for special medicinal supplements and advanced fire-style jutsu. True physical enhancement required more than just rigorous training. Without proper nourishment and medicinal support, excessive training could lead to hidden injuries. For civilian-born shinobi, if they lacked talent in ninjutsu, their fate was practically sealed. Shinji agreed without hesitation. In fact, he worried Shin's request wasn't enough, so he provided additional financial support and even handed him a specially forged Uchiha chakra blade. Unlike ordinary weapons, this sword was made of a rare alloy, far superior to those sold in regular blacksmith shops. Its chakra conductivity was exceptional. Shin didn't refuse the gifts. He had every intention of making the most of them. I need to plan for the future, he thought. Before I get dragged into war, I need Kage-level strength. I have to master the sealing techniques I obtained from the Uzumaki, the fire-style jutsu from Elder Shinji, and the fundamentals of the Navy 6 styles. I'll refine my physical abilities using the lightning chakra mode's principles. As he mentally outlined his training regimen, he arrived home. Seeing an extra pair of shoes at the entrance, a sudden sense of unease crept up his spine. Mikoto's here. He could already imagine the worst-case scenario, a full-blown argument between her and Kanako. Taking a deep breath, Shin cautiously pushed open the door. What he saw in the living room shocked him. Mikoto and Kanako were sitting together on the couch, chatting happily. What the hell? Shin was so sure he'd be walking into a battlefield, yet here they were, laughing like old friends. Mikoto turned to him and smirked. Oh, welcome home, Shin-kun. Kanako blushed and looked away, but there was no trace of hostility between them. Shin closed the door and sighed. I really don't understand women. Chapter 27, Time Skip Shin. Master Shin. Hearing Shin Uchiha's name, Mikoto Uchiha and Uzumaki Kanako, who had been chatting, immediately called out. Shin Uchiha's expression stiffened for a moment, realizing that the two of them had grown quite close. That was unexpected. Once he understood their relationship, Shin Uchiha let out a sigh of relief. Mikoto had learned about Kanako's past, and her sympathy had completely washed away any previous hostility. The suspicion and wariness she once had toward the so-called vixen disappeared, replaced instead by care and a strange sense of sisterhood. After Shin Uchiha returned home, the two women left him in the living room, casually telling him to watch TV while they disappeared into the kitchen to cook dinner together, still engaged in deep conversation. There weren't many programs in Hidden Leaf Village, and what was on the screen was mostly war updates. Not that Shin Uchiha paid attention. His thoughts were elsewhere, entirely focused on the two women in the kitchen. He listened carefully. Their conversation was normal. No hidden barbs, no passive-aggressive remarks, no underlying tension. That was a relief. For a long time now, Shin Uchiha had entertained certain thoughts about keeping both of them by his side. However, it wasn't something he could propose outright. The Uchiha clan had a reputation for intense emotions, and Mikoto had already awakened the three Tomoe Sharingan. The last thing he wanted was for her to develop a certain disposition. If she ever turned yandere, things would get troublesome. Specifically, he was worried that she might attack Kanako. As for himself, he wasn't worried at all. Mikoto's combat ability wasn't exactly terrifying. If it ever came down to a fight, he could easily overpower her, tie her up, and teach her a lesson. Kanako, on the other hand, was a different story. She didn't have the strength to protect herself from Mikoto if things ever went south. With those concerns lingering in his mind, 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. During those 2 years, Shin Uchiha frequently visited the Senju compound, kept up with his duties in the Uchiha police force, and, perhaps most notably, grew closer to Uzumaki Kushina. By now, Kushina had already graduated from the Ninja Academy and was apprenticed at Tsunade. More importantly, the Second Shinobi World War had officially begun. Even though the Uchiha clan had tried to avoid direct involvement, pressure from Hidden Leaf Village's higher-ups and internal factions, particularly those under Toyama Uchiha's influence, had ultimately forced them to participate. Shin Uchiha was no exception. Both Kushina and Kanako, however, were exempt from the battlefield. Kushina was a candidate for the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and the village prioritized keeping her safe. Kanako, as a refugee from the fallen Uzumaki clan, had no formal obligation to fight in Hidden Leaf Village's wars. That didn't mean she was weak. Under Shin Uchiha's tutelage, her combat abilities had improved dramatically. Aside from serving as his personal maid, she had developed formidable skills. As an Uzumaki, her chakra reserves were monstrous, and her proficiency in sealing jutsu, coupled with her use of Kagura's mind's eye, made her a force to be reckoned with. While she wasn't a full-fledged jonin, she was certainly at the level of a specialist, especially when it came to chakra reserves and sealing techniques. Physically, however, she was average at best. Shin Uchiha had only taught her a handful of taijutsu techniques. While Mikoto and even Tsunade had mastered Navy 6 styles, Kanako had only learned a few moves, like finger gun and moon step, which is just enough to defend herself. Shin Uchiha himself had taken things further, unlocking a rare body control technique that allowed him to manipulate his muscles, hair, and even internal organs at will. Even in pure hand-to-hand combat, he could overpower most jonin with ease. Over the past 2 years, he had been careful not to overuse the ability in his left eye, the one that allowed him to manifest new techniques into reality. One of his more significant creations was the enhancement of the adamantine sealing chains, allowing him to manifest them as weapons when using Suzuno. Another major development came when he enhanced Kagura's mind's eye. The upgraded ability, Kagura's heart eye, was no longer just a sensory technique. It could predict enemy movements, gauge strength levels, and even function permanently without chakra consumption. The only drawback was the increased mental strain and slight physical exhaustion. Understanding the potential risks, Shin Uchiha had refrained from recklessly creating new jutsu. Even with the resilience of his Uzumaki heritage, excessive use of his eye could lead to permanent damage. He had seen enough examples in history to know that reckless use of dojutsu could lead to blindness. He wasn't about to make the same mistake. Instead, he had focused on perfecting his existing abilities, especially his physical prowess and ninjutsu. One of his biggest accomplishments was finally stepping into Kage-level strength. His chakra reserves were easily 3 times that of the third Hokage. Given a few more years, he could potentially reach the level of a true powerhouse like Hashirama Senju. Speaking of Hashirama, His final major experiment with his left eye had been the manifestation of wood style. Unfortunately, it wasn't the overwhelmingly powerful version wielded by the first Hokage. The wood style jutsu he had gained was underwhelming. It was functional, sure, but nowhere near the legendary level of Hashirama's techniques. His control over wood style was on par with what Orochimaru's experimental subjects would later display, enough to handle a Jonin, but not enough to compete with a true Kage. The most useful application? Building houses whenever he traveled, so he wouldn't have to sleep outside like a commoner. If he had known it would turn out like this, he might have used his eye power for something else. With his left eye's pupil power running low, replenishing it was becoming a problem. Killing hundreds of ordinary beasts barely made a difference. Even draining the chakra of 100 shinobi wouldn't be as effective as taking the life of a single elite Jonin. That was one of the reasons he had chosen to follow Tsunade to the battlefield. 2 years ago, he had gained immense benefits from the massacre in Hidnedi village. The upcoming war? It was an opportunity. An opportunity to grow stronger. Unlike Shin Uchiha, Uzumaki Kanako wasn't pleased about his deployment. Mikoto would at least be by his side. She, on the other hand, would be left behind. The thought of spending months, or even years, without him left her feeling miserable. The night before Shin Uchiha's departure, as he lay in the bathtub, relaxing after an intense day of training, the door creaked open. Kanako stepped inside, a thin towel clinging to her damp skin. Chapter 28, Bath. Kanako's sudden appearance made Shin Uchiha sit up immediately. Although his relationship with Kanako had deepened over the past 2 years, the number of times they had bathed together remained few. The main reason? Mikoto Uchiha practically lived in his house, and Shin wasn't reckless enough to start a fire in the backyard in front of her. Besides, 2 years ago, Kanako was still too young. Even if Shin had thoughts, he had no means to act on them. But now, things were different. The life force control technique he had refined allowed him to control every muscle in his body at will. He had also undergone rigorous physical training in the past 2 years. At just 12 years old, his height had already reached 1.7 meters, and his physique was no different from a seasoned shinobi in his late teens. Tsunade, who once dragged him along for drinks without hesitation, had recently been avoiding him. Most likely, it had something to do with the night they got drunk together. After downing several bottles of sake, he had pulled Tsunade into an embrace and shamelessly enjoyed the feeling. Since then, she hadn't invited him to drink again. What was the big deal? He ate a piece of grilled meat, she ate some boiled vegetables. It was a fair trade, right? She hadn't even gotten to the point of tearing down the thin paper window between them, so was there really a need to act so nervous? Lying in the warm water, Shin watched as Uzumaki Kanako approached the bath. A thin bath towel wrapped around her delicate frame, the soft fabric outlining her petite yet well-proportioned figure. She looked like a shy flower about to bloom. At this close distance, he could smell the faint, sweet fragrance emanating from her. Kanako pursed her lips shyly, her eyes filled with affection, and whispered, "Young master, allow me to wash your back." She had always called him Master Shin in the past, but upon learning about the Uchiha clan's internal power struggle and Mikoto's high status, she had consciously changed to young master. She believed Shin would eventually take control of Mikoto's faction, and his status and title needed to reflect that. More importantly, she had begun considering herself his servant. Shin had tried to resist at first, but eventually, he got used to it. Yet now, hearing her soft and slightly trembling voice, he felt his bones go weak. Shin intended to get up and step out, but Kanako immediately stopped him. "Let me come in and take care of it. There's no need for you to move." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "Young master, you're leaving with Lady Mikoto and Lady Tsunade tomorrow. Please allow me this small selfishness." Her breath was warm against his ear, her voice gentle, almost pleading. Faced with this combination of cuteness and seduction, the big and the small, both, agreed. Seeing Shin remain seated, Kanako's lips curled into a sweet smile, though her face was still tinged with shyness. As if trying to suppress her embarrassment, she clutched the towel around her tightly. But despite her effort, as she moved forward, the fabric slipped slightly, revealing her slender shoulders and smooth, porcelain-like skin. Though she lacked the overwhelming presence of Tsunade, her youthful charm was still enough to make one's heart race. Kanako stepped into the water, hesitating for a long moment before pressing her delicate, soft hands against his back. She did her best, using all the strength she could muster. "Young master, I will train even harder from now on, so that I can truly assist you in the future." Shin chuckled. "You've already done well. But if you truly want to help me, I can teach you something deeper." Just as he spoke, Kanako's fingers unintentionally pressed against a sensitive spot on his back, sending a shiver down his spine. He turned around, his expression unreadable. Kanako was caught off guard, But before she could react, she suddenly felt as though the bathwater had gotten significantly warmer. No. Not the bathwater. A certain area within the bath had become unbearably hot. Kanako, I need your help with something important. Are you willing? Oh, of course, young master. What should I do? Kanako, still puzzled by the sudden heat, immediately responded upon hearing his serious tone. Seeing her innocent expression, Shin felt a pang of guilt. But strangely, that guilt only excited him further. The bath lasted much longer than usual. By the time they finished, Kanako was utterly exhausted. Shin carried her to bed and tucked her in under a warm quilt. Noticing a small stain at the corner of her lips, Shin deftly pulled out a handkerchief and wiped it away. Kanako had drunk an entire cup of warm milk earlier. Now, she was sleeping soundly, her small body rising and falling with each steady breath. Shin glanced at her peaceful expression and muttered to himself, good thing I've mastered body control techniques like chakra suppression and earth grudge fear. Otherwise, I really might not have been able to hold back. I should teach Kanako to handle things better next time. Smirking, he carefully left her room. Returning to his own bedroom, he let out a small sigh of relief when he realized Mikoto wasn't there. It seemed she was preoccupied with preparations for their departure tomorrow. No wonder Kanako had been so bold tonight. She had clearly seized the opportunity to handle this troublemaker. Alternating between rewarding her and disciplining her seemed to be the right approach. After some thought, Shin decided not to sleep in his room after all. With an almost habitual ease, he made his way back to Kanako's room and slipped under the covers beside her. As soon as he embraced her small frame, she instinctively curled up against him, seeking warmth. This little girl. If she didn't have someone to hold, she probably wouldn't sleep well all night. Kanako stirred slightly, her sleepy eyes half opening. Upon seeing him beside her, she shifted in his arms and nestled closer before drifting back to sleep. The next morning, Mikoto Uchiha arrived early. Upon stepping inside and seeing Shin and Kanako sleeping in each other's arms, her brows furrowed slightly. However, instead of scolding them, she simply smiled. Perhaps, after 2 years, she had grown used to Kanako's presence in Shin's life. After all, considering their circumstances, Mikoto had seen similar situations before. Time to wake up, both of you. She gently patted them awake. Kanako's eyes snapped open upon hearing Mikoto's voice. Realizing she was wrapped in Shin's arms and seeing Mikoto standing nearby, her face turned crimson. She looked exactly like someone who had been caught red-handed. Why, young master? Wake up. Lady Mikoto is here. Kanako hastily shook Shin, her voice panicked. Shin, unwilling to face reality, groaned before sitting up. Upon noticing Mikoto's unusually good mood, he sighed in relief. Over breakfast, Mikoto didn't bring up last night's events, nor did she question why Kanako seemed a bit more flushed than usual. Instead, she got straight to business. After finishing their meal, Mikoto, having already done her homework, briefed Shin on their next destination, the battlefield awaiting them. Chapter 29, Question. A year ago, when tensions between the great shinobi villages were at their peak, the leader of Hidden Rain Village, Hanzo of the Salamander, emerged as a new force and waged war against the Land of Iron, Hidden Sand Village, and Hidden Leaf Village in succession. Under Hanzo's command, Hidden Rain Village's forces took nearly half a year to seize control of almost half of the Land of Iron's territory. His overwhelming victory cemented his reputation as a legend on the battlefield. After establishing himself as a dominant force, Hanzo turned his attention to Hidden Sand Village. However, his deadly poisons, which had previously wreaked havoc, were countered by Chio of the Hidden Sand. This unexpected setback forced Hanzo to retreat, as Hidden Rain Village lacked the sheer military power to overpower Hidden Sand Village completely. Now, Hanzo has turned his sights back on us. At the same time, Hidden Sand Village has been launching skirmishes against Hidden Leaf Village as border forces. While other villages are caught up in their own conflicts, Hidden Leaf Village has not yet been directly targeted by them. Shin-kun, the battlefield we're heading to is likely Hidden Rain Village. They're sending Lady Tsunade in a rush. I'm afraid Hanzo's poisons have already taken a severe toll on Hidden Leaf Village's forces at the front lines. I'll most likely be serving as a medical nin, which means I won't be in too much life-threatening danger. But you, Shin-kun. You'll definitely be deployed to the front lines, so you have to be careful. Mikoto Uchiha explained the current war situation to Shin Uchiha, analyzing the shifting allegiances and risks. More than anything, her concern was for him. Even though she knew Shin Uchiha was strong, she couldn't help but worry. Worrying about him didn't require a reason, it was simply how she felt. Shin Uchiha, who had already gathered some intelligence about the war, listened carefully. After Mikoto finished speaking, he nodded at her and responded seriously, "Don't worry, Mikoto. I won't die. You can be sure of that. Just wait for me to come back." His gaze flicked toward the bathroom for a moment before he smirked at Mikoto. She immediately caught his meaning, her face flushing slightly, but she still nodded seriously. After a brief discussion, they left Kanako behind to look after the house and set off together. Upon reaching their destination, they spotted Tsunade, dressed in her standard Hidden Leaf Village shinobi attire. Her usual revealing outfits were replaced by a proper jonin uniform, sleeveless vest, mesh armor, and armed guards. However, even with the shinobi attire covering her impressive curves were impossible to conceal. Shin immediately noticed something seemed different about her today. They're smaller. Did she bind them down, or is she using some kind of armor plate? His eyes instinctively lingered on Tsunade for a moment, his thoughts wandering. Sensing his gaze, Tsunade quickly turned her head away, biting her lower lip. A faint blush dusted her normally fair skin. Shin had changed too much in the past 2 years. He was no longer a scrawny 12-year-old brat. Even though Tsunade had never actually compared men's physiques in detail, she was confident that Shin's build had developed into something beyond the normal standards of his age. It was as if he was physically compensating for his already monstrous chakra reserves. It was all because of his absurd rate of growth. The last time they drank together, things had almost gotten out of control. She still hadn't had a boyfriend before. She had been suppressing herself for so long. And now, the consequences of that were clear. This can't get out. If anyone found out, I'd definitely be arrested for corrupting a minor. She absent-mindedly touched her lips with her fingertips, still feeling some residual heat. Mikoto Uchiha, standing nearby, caught on to something. There was a different kind of tension in the air when Tsunade and Shin locked eyes. However, she didn't dwell on it too much. Instead, she cleared her throat and spoke softly, "Lady Tsunade. Shouldn't we get moving?" "Oh. All right, let's go. The squad is waiting at the village gate." Tsunade blurted out, quickly regaining her composure. She stole glances at Shin Uchiha as she began explaining the upcoming mission. Just as Mikoto had predicted, their destination was indeed Hidden Rain Village. Hidden Sand Village was currently engaging Hidden Leaf Village's forces, but that battlefield was being handled by none other than the infamous Hidden Leaf Village's White Fang, Tsukumo Hatake. As a result, Hidden Leaf Village's legendary trio, Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and Tsunade, were assigned to Hidden Rain Village's front lines. Their mission was to repel Hanzo's forces before regrouping with Tsukumo Hatake to counter Hidden Sand Village. Tsukumo's sword techniques were particularly effective against Hidden Sand Village's puppet-based combat style. Meanwhile, Tsunade, as Hidden Leaf Village's foremost medical nin, was critical in developing a countermeasure against Hanzo's deadly poisons. The third Hokage's strategy relied heavily on each battlefield neutralizing the enemy's strengths. Theoretically, this approach was the safest course of action. However, Shin Uchiha knew something that the third Hokage did not. They were underestimating Hanzo of the Salamander. Right now, the shinobi world wasn't yet at the stage where Kage-level fighters were treated as common foot soldiers, and Super Kage warriors ran rampant. However, Hanzo was one of the rare individuals capable of single-handedly shifting the tide of an entire war. That poison of his is a game-changer. Understanding the future course of events, Shin started contemplating how he could maximize his own gains while ensuring the safety of Mikoto, Tsunade, and himself. With that in mind, he moved closer to Tsunade and subtly hooked his pinky around hers. Tsunade, who had been walking with the main group, stiffened for a moment before shooting him a side-eye glare filled with affection. "We're heading to the front lines, you idiot," she muttered under her breath. "Now's not the time for this." Despite her words, she didn't pull her hand away. Shin chuckled but quickly got to the real reason he approached her. "Tsunade, how's your progress on the strength of 100 seal?" "Oh, that." Tsunade visibly relaxed. When she had escorted members of the Uzumaki clan in the past, she had received some invaluable sealing techniques from them. Though she wasn't able to master high-level Uzumaki techniques like the adamantine sealing chains, she had taken inspiration from their knowledge. With Shin's guidance, she refined her yin seal development considerably. She lifted her forehead protector slightly, revealing the diamond-shaped mark on her forehead. "It's nearly complete. There are just a few minor adjustments left to stabilize chakra output." Shin nodded. "That's good. As long as you can control the output frequency and maintain chakra storage efficiency, you'll be able to keep your body in peak condition for extended battles." Hearing his approval, Tsunade couldn't help but smile slightly. After all, she had always valued his insights. Chapter 30, Yin Seal. The Yin Seal had another advantage: it allowed for micro-adjustments to the body, maintaining a youthful appearance over time. Tsunade was still young, and she had no doubts about her beauty or figure, but who could guarantee the future? For a woman, retaining her youth could be just as important as strength. The confidence that she would never age gave her the ability to stand tall before Shin Uchiha, as if declaring that time would never take anything away from her. That lingering concern she had about a child being crushed under the weight of a massive force? It vanished the moment she completed the Yin Seal's development. When Shin Uchiha heard of her success, a flicker of intrigue flashed in his crimson Sharingan. The Yin Seal. An S-rank medical seal, it's definitely powerful. Shin Uchiha also planned to test his left eye's abilities in the future, especially its potential in an advanced form of sensory jutsu. Once I master the Yin Seal, I can ask Tsunoda to take me to the Shikatsu forest and see if I can attain sage mode. Deep down, he had always wanted to visit Mayabaku and Richie Cave as well, learning all 3 variations of sage mode. Until now, he had never voiced this ambition, feeling he wasn't strong enough. But now, he had the strength, and the confidence. These thoughts passed in an instant, he'd act on them only after the war concluded. Shin Uchiha followed Tsunoda closely, listening to her detailed explanations as he learned the Yin Seal step by step. By the time their team had covered half the distance and made camp for the night, Shin Uchiha had already mastered the technique. However, he did not place the Yin Seal on his forehead like Tsunoda. Channeling his chakra into a single point, a moment later, a black tomoe pattern formed on his right shoulder. The seal greedily absorbed his chakra, storing it away like a hidden reservoir. Sitting cross-legged, refining his chakra, a rare smile appeared on Shin's face. The Yin Seal not only regulated the body's functions but could be used as an energy reserve. An extra chakra pool? No matter how he looked at it, it was a damn good deal. Shin-kun, your learning ability is incredible. Mikoto Uchiha, who had been observing him, spoke up. She could tell just by looking at him, he had already mastered the Yin Seal. Meanwhile, even with Tsunoda's direct guidance, she still couldn't grasp the fundamentals. Despite having awakened her 3 Tomoe Sharingan, which had drastically improved her talent and learning ability, she still wasn't on Shin's level. Don't compare yourself to that little monster. There's nothing normal about him. Tsunoda sat beside Mikoto, rolling her eyes at Shin Uchiha before clicking her tongue in reluctant admiration. Mikoto's face turned pink. After all, she had lived alongside Shin for 2 years, witnessing his growth, both in skill and in certain other areas. And to be fair, Shin wasn't heartless. He had helped her when she struggled, albeit in his own way. From initial awkwardness to eventual familiarity, she had suffered a lot. Thinking about it, Mikoto glanced at Tsunoda beside her with a hint of envy. Having observed her closely, she couldn't help but admire Tsunoda's overwhelming presence. If given more time to develop, perhaps she, too, could reach the so-called fuel to the fire effect Shin always teased about. As they conversed, Shin suddenly stopped refining his chakra and turned his gaze toward the dense forest on the left. To be precise, he wasn't using his eyes. Kagura Mind's eye, his sensory ability, had picked up on something. A group of ninjas was approaching stealthily. They were not reinforcements. Since they had not yet engaged, he couldn't determine their intentions, whether they were hostile or merely cautious. A 5-man team is approaching. Do we have backup nearby? Shin suddenly asked, addressing Tsunoda. As the leader of the 30-man squad, she furrowed her brows at his words. The team's designated sensor ninja was equally confused. I don't sense anything. They're still 20 kilometers away. That's why. Shin replied flatly. 20 kilometers? The sensor ninja's eyes twitched. No known perception technique could detect enemies at such a range while also pinpointing their numbers. But everyone knew of Shin's special relationship with Tsunoda. The sensor ninja dared not mock him outright. Lowering his head, he simply admitted, as Lord Shin Uchiha stated, I don't sense anything. Tsunoda's brows knit together. We do have reinforcements, but not in this location. There have been reports of ambushes along the route to the Land of Rain. Her tone was grave, setting the course for their next actions. The resting ninjas instantly mobilized. Under Tsunoda and Shin's command, a squad was dispatched to intercept the unidentified force. However, among the Hidden Leaf Village ninja accompanying Shin, a few expressions turned sour. Hidden Leaf Village's sentiment toward the Uchiha clan had not yet reached the point of open hostility, but the tension was undeniable. After all, the Uchiha were now primarily stationed in the Hidden Leaf Village military police force, essentially the village's enforcers. Their work was about as appreciated as that of overzealous security officers. Add to that their infamous tempers, and it was no surprise that most people viewed them with resentment. Having just settled down to rest, now being forced to march again because of an Uchiha's orders, it left a bad taste in their mouths. Sensing their displeasure, Shin ignored them. Silently, he dashed through the trees, his movements swift and fluid, forcing the others to work hard just to keep up. 5 minutes later, he halted. Visual on the enemy. Mikoto, right behind him, immediately spotted the 5-man team Shin had detected earlier. She signaled the other ninjas with quick hand signs. Enemy forces? The 4 Hidden Leaf Village ninjas who had doubted Shin's words fell silent. Tsunoda's expression darkened as she recognized the enemy leader. That's Kazemaru, an elite jonin from Hidden Sand Village. The Sand Village had already declared war on Hidden Leaf Village. For an elite jonin to be this deep behind enemy lines, he was undoubtedly on a critical mission. Tsunoda cast a sidelong glance at Shin, her respect for him growing. When did this brat get such insane sensory abilities? Then, a sudden, absurd thought popped into her mind. Did this little bastard cheat with his perception ability every time we gambled and I lost? Her eye twitched. She'd get answers later. For now, war was waiting for them. Chapter 31, San Shinobi Shin Uchiha sensed something and glanced back at Tsunoda. He could feel the slight hostility emanating from her, but it disappeared almost as quickly as it had come. He didn't dwell on it. He had more pressing concerns. His priority was simple: establish dominance. This was his first mission since returning, and the Hidden Leaf Village shinobi around him had underestimated him because of his age. That alone was unacceptable. Even if he wasn't living off Tsunoda, the mere implication that he needed her support irked him. Move out. Without waiting for a detailed battle plan, Shin Uchiha rushed forward at the command. It was just a 5-man team led by an elite jonin, hardly a challenge. If anything, this was an opportunity to test if his skills had dulled over the past 2 years. Seeing him charge in alone, Tsunoda tensed. As his leading jonin, she knew he was talented, maybe even monstrous, but talent alone didn't win battles. She lacked a full grasp of his strength. The same could be said for Mikoto Uchiha, who stood beside her, calm as ever. But as his wife, she would never question his decisions. Block their escape routes first. Mikoto activated her Sharingan, her 3 Tomoe spinning, and issued commands to the Hidden Leaf Village nin. The blood-red eyes alone were enough to send a chill down their spines. They obeyed without hesitation. Chidori Senbon. Shin flicked 3 shuriken into the air, coating them in lightning chakra before launching them forward. The electrified projectiles shot toward the enemy team, streaking through the air like miniature bolts of lightning. Enemy attack. Sensing the incoming attack, the elite jonin Kazemaru reacted quickly, pulling out a kunai to intercept. Clang. The moment the kunai made contact, an electrical discharge exploded outward. The sudden surge of lightning chakra paralyzed the nearby Hidden Sand Village nin, leaving them momentarily vulnerable. 2 chunin barely had time to react before the shuriken pierced their throats. They clutched at their necks, gurgling as they collapsed. The remaining Hidden Sand Village nin faltered, their expressions shifting from confidence to horror. Their comrades had been alive mere seconds ago, and now they were bleeding out on the battlefield. Summon your puppets. Now. 3 Hidden Sand Village nin immediately deployed their puppets, one shaped like a feral beast, another resembling a heavily armored lizard, and the last a winged construct hovering in the air. Puppet users. Shin nearly laughed. They had no idea how outmatched they were. Although he possessed a certain advantage over them, he had no intention of using it. It simply wasn't necessary. With a sharp motion, Shin drew the katana from his back. The silver blade gleamed menacingly under the sunlight. Poison claw strike. 1,000 poison darts. Explosive feather barrage. The first puppet lunged, its claws coated in lethal poison. The second puppet spewed a barrage of razor-sharp needles. Above, the bird-like puppet unleashed a rain of explosive feathers. Tsunoda and Mikoto stiffened at the sight. Even the Hidden Leaf Village nin, who had been skeptical of Shin's recklessness, momentarily thought he had made a fatal mistake. Just before the attacks reached him, Shin's blade crackled with lightning. Rikiri, blade surge. With precise, fluid movements, he swung his sword. Sizzle. The puppet tiger's claws were severed in an instant. Shin pivoted, slashing through the incoming darts with such precision that they ricocheted back toward their owner. The lizard puppet was riddled with its own weapons before its controller could react. The explosive feathers descended, but Shin didn't even look up. Lightning style, thunder cage. A pulse of azure electricity radiated from his body, arcing toward the falling projectiles. Each explosive feather was intercepted midair, detonating harmlessly above him. The bird puppet, still hovering, was struck by residual lightning. Its chakra strings snapped, sending it crashing to the ground. In the span of mere seconds, the once formidable puppets had been reduced to smoldering wreckage. Kazemaru's eyes widened in shock. A monster, he muttered. Realizing the severity of the situation, he launched a desperate attack. Wind style, wind blade. A near-invisible crescent of wind chakra shot toward Shin, slicing cleanly through anything in its path. Wind chakra was notoriously difficult to counter with direct attacks. Against most shinobi, this would be a lethal move. But against Shin? He smirked. Too slow. As the wind blade approached, Shin adjusted his grip on his katana. The moment the two clashed, his blade cut through the wind chakra cleanly, dispersing the attack. Whoosh! The severed wind blade deviated, slicing through the trees behind him with surgical precision. Kazemaru paled. That technique. Only Sakamo Hatake, the White Fang of Hidden Leaf Village, had been known to do something like that. And now, before his very eyes, another Uchiha had done the same. You're getting distracted. Shin's voice snapped Kazemaru out of his daze. Rai Hidden Mist Village Blade, Thunderfall. With a flick of his wrist, Shin sent 3 arcs of lightning slashing toward his opponent. Wind style, great breakthrough. Kazemaru reacted instantly, unleashing a massive gust of wind in an attempt to disrupt the incoming attack. It was a mistake. The moment the wind clashed with the lightning arcs, the electricity dispersed into the air, but rather than vanishing, it was carried forward with the gust, turning Kazemaru's own defense into his downfall. Lightning surged through the wind, striking Kazemaru directly. His body convulsed violently before he collapsed to his knees, steam rising from his burned skin. Shin didn't give him a chance to recover. Chapter 32, Intel. Seeing Kazemaru's move, Shin Uchiha smirked. The lightning arc that was originally aimed at Kazemaru suddenly veered and struck the sand ninja behind him instead. These 3 sand shinobi were puppet users, and with their puppets destroyed, their combat capabilities were far weaker than even a standard chunin. They stood no chance against Shin Uchiha's attack. The 3 were struck simultaneously, sent flying over 10 meters by the sheer impact. Of course, Shin Uchiha controlled his power. He wasn't going to kill them all. He needed at least one of them alive to extract information. Instant transmission. In the blink of an eye, Shin Uchiha vanished and reappeared before the retreating Kazemaru, giving him no chance to mourn his fallen comrades. Wind style, Kazemaru. Kazemaru tried to retreat while forming hand seals for a jutsu. But Shin Uchiha wouldn't allow it. In close quarters, letting an enemy complete hand seals was out of the question. All Kazemaru saw was a flash of lightning. Before he could even react, a blade crackling with electricity severed both his hands at the wrists, sending them flying into the air. The next moment, his entire body convulsed as the same electric charge coursed through him. Thud. Kazemaru collapsed, his body stiff and paralyzed from the surge of lightning. His wrists gushed blood, yet apart from his eyes, he couldn't move an inch. It's over already? The Hidden Leaf Village shinobi, who had scattered to engage the sand forces, were stunned at how quickly the battle had ended. Shin Uchiha turned to them, flicking the blood from his blade before speaking in a commanding tone. Clean up this mess. I'll handle the interrogation. His tone was that of a superior giving orders, firm, absolute, unquestionable. The 2 Hidden Leaf Village shinobi who had been gloating earlier felt a chill run down their spines when his Sharingan swept over them. It was as if Shin Uchiha had seen through every thought they'd harbored just moments ago. None of them dared to question him now. Even though he was speaking in such an overbearing manner, they no longer found it unreasonable. Shin Uchiha discreetly activated a fire-based absorption technique to consume the life force and chakra of the 2 sand ninja he had killed. The sensation of siphoning another shinobi's chakra was far more satisfying than feeding on wild animals. As the squad regrouped, Tsunade exhaled and glanced at Shin Uchiha. Damn kid, when did you get this strong behind my back? Feels like you could already give me a run for my money. Shin Uchiha internally scoffed. Compete with her? He had already surpassed her. What kind of self-delusion was she living in? Still, in front of so many people, he didn't bother mocking her. That's all thanks to your training, he said flatly, his tone mechanical and insincere. The other Hidden Leaf Village shinobi looked at Tsunade with newfound admiration. Seeing their gazes, Tsunade grinned smugly. At that moment, Shin Uchiha leaned in close and whispered, "It'd be unfair if I didn't give you a reward later. Whatever it is, just say it," Tsunade said, confidently patting her chest. Shin Uchiha's eyes flickered as he looked at the ample view before him, his smirk turning mischievous. "I'd like you to use that sharp tongue of yours to mock me next time." Tsunade's expression froze. She instinctively crossed her arms over her chest. She hadn't expected him to turn his reward into something so depraved. But after a moment's hesitation, her face flushed red, and she nodded ever so slightly. "After we get back. Don't even think about asking for it now. Got it? I know my limits." Shin Uchiha chuckled and rejoined the group. They returned to their temporary base, dragging the immobilized sand ninjas along. Seeing this, the other Hidden Leaf Village shinobi regarded Shin Uchiha with a mixture of awe and fear. The sensory ninjas, who had previously doubted him, lowered their heads and kept quiet, as if trying to make themselves invisible. Kazemaru remained conscious, his gaze steely despite his condition. It was clear that a simple interrogation wouldn't make him talk. "We're on a tight schedule. Should we just kill them?" someone suggested. "I think we should take them back to Hidden Leaf Village for questioning. Or maybe hand them over at the front lines?" The group debated their next move. Tsunade, growing impatient, turned to Shin Uchiha. "What do you think?" Seeing her "I'll follow your lead" expression, Shin Uchiha sighed. She was pushing all responsibility onto him. But by now, the Hidden Leaf Village shinobi had stopped resisting his leadership. All eyes were on him, waiting for his decision. Noticing their shift in attitude, Shin Uchiha gave a small nod. He enjoyed being respected. Admired, even. But above all, he refused to be underestimated. There was no point in hiding his strength, he wasn't the type to play the fool to catch the tiger. Standing at the center, he raised his voice. "Take these sand ninjas to the front lines. I'll handle the interrogation personally." There were no objections. The group cleared a path for Shin Uchiha as he approached the captives. Ganjutsu, Sharingan. Grabbing the restrained Kazemaru, Shin Uchiha forced him to meet his gaze. The moment their eyes locked, Kazemaru's resistance crumbled, and the hypnotic pattern of the Sharingan reflected in his pupils. This technique, one of the many unique abilities of the Uchiha, had never failed him. With Kazemaru's will completely subjugated, Shin Uchiha began his questioning. Nearby, Mikoto Uchiha pulled out a scroll and started taking notes. The intel they extracted wasn't just about the Sand Village's plans, it also revealed the purpose of Kazemaru's team. Besides them, there were 5 other squads operating similarly. Their mission was to intercept Hidden Leaf Village's forces heading toward the Land of Rain. The Sand Village wanted to delay Hidden Leaf Village's reinforcements, forcing the war between Hidden Leaf Village and the Rain Village into a stalemate. If Hidden Leaf Village became bogged down in the Rain Village, they would have to fight on 2 fronts, giving the Sand Village a strategic advantage. The third Hokage's strategy was a swift blitzkrieg to eliminate the Rain Village forces, then focus on crushing the Sand. But if the Sand's plan succeeded, the war's outcome would become uncertain. "This information needs to reach Hidden Leaf Village immediately," Tsunade said, her expression serious. She quickly dispatched a messenger to relay the intel. As for Kazemaru and the remaining Sand ninjas, they were still taken to the front lines, just as Shin Uchiha had commanded. Chapter 33. The next day, when Shin Uchiha and Tsunade arrived in the Land of Rain, the intelligence squad had already returned to Hidden Leaf Village with their findings. Upon receiving the report, the third Hokage narrowed his eyes and tapped his pipe against the ashtray, his face darkening. Humphrey, so the Sand Village had such intentions all along. With a cold snort, Hiruzen immediately ordered the Anbu to secretly escort the next squad to the Land of Rain. Any Sand ninja found intercepting Hidden Leaf Village's forces was to be annihilated without mercy. After issuing the order, his gaze flickered upon learning that Shin Uchiha was responsible for this crucial intelligence breakthrough. A complicated expression crossed his face. Shin Uchiha is growing at an alarming rate. Defeating an elite Sand ninja squad on his own. Hiruzen murmured, lost in thought. If this had been at the start, he might have been pleased. Back then, he had believed Shin Uchiha to be aligned with his ideology. But over the past 2 years, through various exchanges, he had came to realize that Shin did not subscribe to the will of fire at all. That fact alone irked him. What was worse, Shin Uchiha had fully aligned himself with the hawks of the Uchiha clan, further widening the ideological chasm between them. Hiruzen still remembered the era of the second Hokage, when the hawkish Satsune Uchiha had attempted a coup. The memory remained fresh in his mind. If not for that incident, the Uchiha wouldn't have been gradually pushed to the outskirts of Hidden Leaf Village's political power. Still, Hiruzen knew he couldn't suppress them too overtly. Instead, he had promised the Uchiha that their contributions in this war would earn them the right to move their clan district back into the heart of Hidden Leaf Village. To that end, he had subtly steered the dovish Uchiha faction under Toyama Uchiha toward the Sand Front, where glory was easier to attain. If he cannot be controlled, then he must be eliminated. Hiruzen took a deep breath and pushed the thought to the back of his mind. The war was ongoing, and Hidden Leaf Village could not afford to waste a valuable asset just yet. If Shin could be used and sacrificed for Hidden Leaf Village's victory, it would save Hiruzen a great deal of trouble. When Shin Uchiha and his squad reached the Rain Country's battlefield, they were swiftly integrated into the main force, where they encountered Jiraiya and Orochimaru. The Land of Rain's battlefield was vast. Hidden Leaf Village, with its superior numbers and military might, was steadily pressuring Hidden Rain Village's forces. However, the Hidden Rain Village was holding out by leveraging its treacherous terrain and the sheer strength of its leader, Hanzo the Salamander. Jiraiya and Orochimaru, both in full combat gear, greeted Tsunade warmly. As fellow students of the third Hokage, their camaraderie was evident. Jiraiya's mood, however, darkened upon spotting Shin Uchiha beside her. He had long harbored feelings for Tsunade, and the rumors in Hidden Leaf Village about her preference for younger men only made him more uncomfortable. Seeing her conversing so freely with Shin, Jiraiya clenched his jaw. His mind drifted to those accursed rumors. Damn it! Is it true that she likes young guys? He grumbled to himself but remained silent. His foul mood went unnoticed by Tsunade, who was more focused on the battlefield situation. Orochimaru, on the other hand, remained as unreadable as ever. However, upon learning that Shin had taken down an elite Sand Ninja team single-handedly, his snake-like gaze lingered on the young Uchiha with keen interest. After detaining the captured Sand Ninja, Tsunade wasted no time. "Shin, Mikoto, come with me to the medical camp. I need to assess the wounded and analyze the effects of Hanzo's poison before I can create an antidote." Shin nodded without hesitation but made sure to check in with the Uchiha forces stationed here. It was then that he noticed a concerning pattern. The Uchiha positioned on the rain front were almost exclusively hawks. Meanwhile, the doves had been stationed on the sand front, where they had far more opportunities to gain recognition. Not only is this battlefield more dangerous, but even if we defeat Hidden Rain Village, it won't boost our reputation. Hiruzen really plays his little games well. Shin narrowed his eyes and scoffed internally. The Hawks were already a minority within the clan, and with Hiruzen's manipulations, their numbers were dwindling even further. No wonder Fugaku Uchiha had managed to ascend as clan head later in the timeline. Hiruzen had likely been stoking internal conflicts all along. Yet, despite these political maneuvers, once the war ended, Hidden Leaf Village's suppression of the Uchiha only worsened. With the Nine Tails incident, Fugaku was eventually forced into the role of a rebel. The irony of it all was almost amusing. Mikoto Uchiha, walking beside him, also seemed troubled by these observations. However, she pushed her concerns aside and followed Tsunade into the medical tent. Inside, the sight was grim. Nearly a fifth of the wounded here were Uchiha. For those who succumbed to their injuries, Shin personally incinerated their bodies to prevent disease outbreaks, an unspoken, grim duty of war. Ordinary soldiers did not receive the luxury of a proper burial, and it was impossible to transport their remains back to Hidden Leaf Village. While others mourned, Shin saw opportunity. In less than a week, he had restored all the chakra he had expended in his left eye. His overall reserves had also expanded significantly. "I might just get addicted to this." A dark thrill ran through him before he quickly suppressed it. Meanwhile, Tsunade had thrown herself into her work, working tirelessly to neutralize Hanzo's poison. Hidden Rain Village quickly caught wind of this development. Hidden Leaf Village's forces were emboldened, while Hidden Rain Village's morale wavered. Hanzo, fully aware of the situation's gravity, wasted no time. Their entire resistance hinged on two things: the Sand Village keeping Hidden Leaf Village occupied, and his poisons crippling enemy forces. With Tsunade on the battlefield, that second advantage was slipping away. Hanzo immediately dispatched his best assassins to eliminate her before she could succeed. But he had not accounted for Shin. With his formidable perception, bolstered by the Kagura Mind's Eye, Shin intercepted every assassination attempt before the attackers could strike. In just 2 days, he had personally foiled 8 ambushes. His reputation on the battlefield was rapidly rising, second only to Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade themselves. Realizing that a highly perceptive shinobi was patrolling the enemy lines, Hidden Rain Village finally ceased its assassination attempts. They could not afford to keep throwing high-level combatants into a losing battle. Yet, even as Hidden Rain Village retreated into defensive strategies, Shin had no intention of slowing down. Chapter 34, Nawaki Shin Uchiha took a deep breath, calming his mind before turning to Tsunade. "Any progress on cracking it?" he asked. Tsunade shook her head, frustration evident on her face. Seeing this, Shin exhaled and refocused, activating his Kagura's Mind Eye. In an instant, his perception expanded, scanning 100 kilometers in all directions. Every chakra signature, every presence within range, was laid bare in his mind. He continued his routine inspection of the camp, ensuring no enemy forces had infiltrated their ranks. Then, a frown formed on Shin's face. His brows furrowed as he examined the chakra signatures once more. It wasn't that he had found an unfamiliar chakra, rather, he had sensed a very familiar one. Nawaki. What the hell is Tsunade's little brother doing here? As the heir to the Senju clan, Nawaki was someone Uzumaki Mido kept a tight leash on. The boy was never allowed to leave Hidden Leaf Village unsupervised, especially not to a war-torn front like the Land of Rain. It made no sense. 12 years old and sneaking onto a battlefield? That's some next-level brain damage. Shin muttered. His eyes narrowed as he pinpointed Nawaki's location. The brat's at Orochimaru's camp. Is he looking for his sensei? Shin knew the relationship between Nawaki and Orochimaru. Nawaki had been training under him for a while, and Shin rarely saw him outside of missions. It was always Orochimaru taking him along. But considering what Shin remembered about Nawaki's death in the Second Shinobi War, this didn't sit right. A conspiracy was brewing, and Shin could smell it. He didn't say anything to Tsunade. If she found out, she'd explode, and that wouldn't help anyone. Instead, he made an excuse, slipped away, and suppressed his chakra signature using Kagura's Mind Eye, before quietly heading toward Orochimaru's camp. Magnet style, third eye. Near the camp, Shin formed a floating iron sand eye in his palm. Through this eye, he could spy on the scene ahead. As long as the conversation wasn't encrypted by special means, he could even read their lips. Everything in the eye's vision was relayed back to him. Combined with his wide-range sensory abilities, Shin could practically see and hear anything within his range. He guided the third eye toward Nawaki's position. Sure enough, the chakra signature belonged to Nawaki. But Shin also sensed 3 other unfamiliar chakra signatures near him. They weren't enemy assassins from Hidden Rain, these guys were moving too deliberately, almost like escorts. Did these 3 help him get here? Shin mused. Given Nawaki's current strength, barely at Chunin level, the brat had no business making it this far alone. His suspicions were confirmed when he got a good look at the idiot himself. Nawaki bounced on his feet, an excited grin on his face. Hell yeah. I made it to the front lines, he declared, punching the air triumphantly. Haha. And Grandma said I wasn't allowed to come here. What does she know? I'm gonna show everyone what I can do. My sister. My grandma. They'll see I'm an independent shinobi now. The brat strutted around the camp, soaking it all in like a tourist. He had no idea how out of place he looked. Shin's deadpan stare deepened. This is why Senju needs better leadership. Nawaki had snuck out of Hidden Leaf Village 3 days ago. Most shinobi his age were already out on missions, yet he had been stuck in the village, coddled and overprotected. Then, while eavesdropping at the Hokage's office, he heard about Shin making a name for himself on the front lines. That was all it took. The brat got it into his head that he needed to prove himself. So he ran away. Kid's got the survival instincts of a boiled potato. Shin muttered. How did he not die on the way here? Turns out, he wasn't alone. 3 masked shinobi had shadowed him the entire way. Root. The third Hokage's personal enforcers. They had ensured Nawaki's survival until he reached the front lines. But they had never interfered otherwise. Right. They just needed to make sure he arrived. If he died on the battlefield, it wouldn't be Hidden Leaf Village's fault. In other words, someone had sent Nawaki here to die. Shin's jaw clenched. He didn't care much about Senju politics, but even he could see the game being played. If Nawaki died in transit, Mito and Tsunade would tear Hidden Leaf Village apart. But if he died fighting, he'd be a war hero. The Senju clan wouldn't be able to retaliate. Shin exhaled through his nose. And the kid doesn't even know he's a pawn. Meanwhile, Nawaki was still talking. Don't tell my sister or sensei yet. I want to surprise them with how strong I am, he declared. Shin felt second-hand embarrassment just watching him. The Hidden Leaf Village Jounin in charge of the camp gave Nawaki a look that could only be described as why is this happening to me? But orders were orders. There's a recon mission at the border. The Jounin finally said. Scout enemy movement and check for traps. It's dangerous. Are you sure you want to go? Of course. Don't underestimate me. I'm gonna be Hokage one day. Nawaki beamed. The Jounin sighed. Shin, watching from above, also sighed. The kid had all the signs of a future corpse. Overconfident. Sheltered. No combat instincts. And walking straight into a setup. Shin had barely interacted with him before. But now, he was convinced this idiot was an upgraded version of Naruto, except without the actual talent to back it up. No wonder Uzumaki Mito still held authority over the Senju clan. Tsunade didn't want the job, and Nawaki. Well, Nawaki was proof that not everyone should breed. This fool got played. Shin muttered. The root escorted him, but only so he wouldn't die early. They needed him to reach the battlefield. If he dies here, he's a hero. Hidden Leaf Village gets away clean. Tsunade and Mito lose their say in politics. Everyone wins. Except him. Shin clicked his tongue. He wasn't exactly sentimental, but he had half a mind to step in. Technically, Nawaki was his brother-in-law by association. Which meant if he let the brat die here, Tsunade would take it out on him later. Guess I'll have to clean this up. Suppressing his chakra further, Shin Uchiha silently began making his way toward the battlefield. You owe me for this, Senju brat. Chapter 35, Nawaki is about to die. Magnet style, iron sand marker. A small amount of unnoticed iron sand lifted off the ground and latched onto the corner of Nawaki's shirt. Having placed the marker, Shin Uchiha had no intention of chasing after him. Instead, he turned back toward camp. If he rushed over to drag Nawaki away, and the brat resisted, he'd have to fight him. Shin weighed the odds of that happening. Pretty damn high. If he really got into a brawl with Nawaki, he'd just end up looking like an idiot. The last thing he needed was to be the camp's new joke. Shin wasn't dumb enough to involve himself in a pointless mess. He landed silently in front of Tsunada's medical tent and stepped inside. Tsunada was hunched over a collection of test tubes, deep in concentration. Using the toxins they had gathered, she was in the process of formulating an antidote. The moment she spotted him, her voice snapped out like a kunai. "Shin! Where the hell have you been? I need you to use your healing jutsu to test how effective it is against this poison." Now that he thought about it, he was probably the only person in the entire camp capable of assisting her at this level. Without his help, the antidote's development would slow down drastically. "All right." Shin agreed, stepping forward and placing his hands over the test subjects, his chakra glowing with the pale green hue of the mystical palm jutsu. He adjusted the chakra flow, observing how much was needed to neutralize the poison. As he worked, he casually dropped the real reason he had come. "By the way, I picked something up during my patrol." Tsunada didn't look up, still mixing the liquid. "What?" Nawaki came to the camp. The test tube in her hand slipped from her fingers and shattered against the floor. Her bright brown eyes widened, her expression shifting as 1,000 emotions warred on her face. Her mouth opened and closed before she finally found her voice. "What?" "There were a few unknown shinobi with him. Anbu or Root, most likely." Shin continued, as if he hadn't just dropped a bomb. "He accepted a reconnaissance mission. Based on the marker I put on him, he's already heading toward the front lines." Silence. "Then, what the fuck is he doing on the front lines?" Tsunada's roar shook the entire tent. Her chest rose and fell violently, her anger tangible in the air. Crack. 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 Her fists clenched, knuckles popping loudly as her fury continued to build. Her teeth ground together, her jaw tight as she growled, "Where is that little shit now?" "They're approaching the edge of the battlefield." Shin answered dryly. "I can still sense him." Tsunada's fury flared even hotter. "That dumbass. He finally started getting better, and now he's charging into the most dangerous zone. Let's move." She ripped off her gloves and shoved her medical instruments aside, not giving a damn about the antidote anymore. She knew her brother well. Too well. Nawaki was kind-hearted, but that just meant he lacked self-preservation. With no battlefield experience, no real perception ability, and too much idealism, he wouldn't last a damn day. Tsunada turned to the only other person present. "Mikoto, keep working. Follow the formula I gave you." Mikoto Uchiha nodded and continued her work as Tsunada turned to Shin. With him leading the way, the two of them sprinted toward Nawaki's location. From Shin's sensory ability, he could tell that Nawaki was still moving, dashing through the forest like an idiot with no awareness. The brat had no tracking jutsu, no experience, nothing. Just blind confidence. Shin exhaled sharply, already predicting how this was going to end. As Nawaki charged recklessly ahead, he reached the boundary of the range shinobi's territory. A minefield of explosive tags lay ahead. Obvious. Painfully obvious. And yet, Nawaki didn't notice. Shin had to hold back the urge to laugh. Is this dumbass serious? The 3 root shinobi tailing him certainly weren't going to warn him. Their orders were simple: escort Nawaki to the front. If he accidentally died? Well, that would just make their jobs easier. Nawaki's eyes lit up as he spotted a set of footprints ahead. He grinned, his excitement making him run faster. "This fool," Shin muttered. Even through his iron sand perception, he could clearly see the damn trap. Is he blind? He wasn't the only one who noticed. The root shinobi saw it too, but made no attempt to stop Nawaki. Instead, they simply prepared to recover the body. Then, Yosha! With an excited shout, Nawaki leaped forward, straight into the trap. Shin instantly moved. Magnet-style, iron sand barrier. From thousands of meters away, his refined iron sand surged toward Nawaki, encasing him in a protective sphere just before his feet touched the ground. Boom! The explosion sent fire and debris into the sky. Tsunada skidded to a halt beside Shin, panic flickering across her face. What the hell was that? Shin exhaled and said flatly, "Nawaki." He jumped into an explosive tag trap. Tsunada's face went pale. "He what?" "I saved him." Shin added lazily. "But you seriously need to sit this brat down and give him a lesson on survival. Even academy kids know better." Tsunada's hands clenched at her sides. Then, suddenly, she crossed her arms and looked away. "It's not my fault. I wasn't the one who raised him." Shin gave her a skeptical look. "What?" She shrugged. "I was already a chunin when my parents had him. They took care of him. Then Grandma Maida raised him, and after that, Orochimaru trained him. It's got nothing to do with me." The more she spoke, the more it sounded like she was desperately distancing herself from the problem. Shin stared at her. "You really gonna pretend you're not related?" Tsunada scowled, crossing her arms tighter. "I'm not. I barely even know him. Shin just shook his head in amusement. Then, suddenly, something clicked in his mind. Wait. You had parents? The air grew still. Tsunade slowly turned her head toward him. What did you just say? Shin, now sensing danger, coughed awkwardly. I never heard you mention them before. Tsunade's fists trembled. So you think I just spawned out of the fucking dirt? Shin wisely shut up. For a second. Then he gave her a once-over. Well, with how you fight, it wouldn't be that weird. Tsunade roared and took a swing at him. Shin barely dodged in time, smirking as they continued toward Nawaki's location. Chapter 36. Tsunade rolled her eyes at Shin Uchiha and said, First of all, my parents aren't dead. My father is from the Senju clan, and my mother is just an ordinary villager from Hidden Leaf Village. Second, why should I even mention them? They're alive and well, in their 40s. Third, they integrated into Hidden Leaf Village according to my grandfather's teachings. They don't want unnecessary attention, and they specifically told me not to disturb them too much. Shin Uchiha coughed awkwardly, realizing something that had never crossed his mind before. Tsunade's parents never existed in his previous knowledge, and she never mentioned them. He had always assumed she was like him, both parents gone. Turned out she had both parents alive but lived independently, keeping her distance. In an attempt to shift the subject, Shin Uchiha's expression turned serious. The situation on Nawaki's side isn't good. Looks like Root operatives are after him. Root again. Denzo. Tsunade's eyes darkened. She already suspected Root had been involved in the previous attack on Shin, and now, here they were again. There was no doubt about it, the Senju clan was being targeted. Tsunade clenched her fists. Right now, she wanted nothing more than to storm back to Hidden Leaf Village and drag Denzo out of his rat hole for a proper beating. Meanwhile, the three Root ninjas, who had came to recover the body of Nawaki, were confused. Inside the fiery crater, something stirred. At the center, a dark sphere formed. AHH. Hot. 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 A muffled scream echoed from within, reaching Tsunade's ears. The Root ninjas hesitated, unsure of what was happening, but one of them took action, launching an attack at the strange iron sphere. TCH. You think you can break through my iron sand shield? From 1,000 meters away, Shin Uchiha called out, Tsunade, get over there now. I'll keep these three occupied. Although Tsunade had no clue what he meant by iron sand, she didn't question it. She took off running toward the location he pointed at. Magnet style, iron sand grip. Shin Uchiha focused his chakra. The iron sand he had refined carried his own chakra, allowing him to control it remotely. It wouldn't last long, but it was more than enough to deal with a few Jonin. The black sand iron swirled before forming a massive hand that shot out of the ground, reaching for the Root ninja attacking the shield. Two of them reacted fast enough to retreat. The third wasn't so lucky. Magnet style, iron sand binding kill. Shin Uchiha clenched his fist, and instantly, the giant sand iron hand exploded with hundreds of sharp spikes, impaling the Root ninja trapped within. His body convulsed violently, transforming into a grotesque pincushion of iron spikes before going limp. Soul transference, black flame shroud. Shin Uchiha's right eye spun, revealing the ominous glow of his Mangekyo Sharingan. In an instant, the black flames of his jutsu flared to life, consuming the sand iron hand along with the impaled ninja's corpse. The chakra and life force absorbed from the victim momentarily reinforced the iron sand, making it stronger. This was the technique he had developed over the past 2 years, a refined version of soul transference. His left eye allowed him to shape the black flames at will, similar to Sasuke Uchiha's Kagetsuchi. Now, he could attach these flames to his techniques or weapons, draining life force and chakra from his enemies while attacking. And this was the first time he had unleashed it from long range. Seeing how effective it was, he couldn't help but smirk. Next up. Magnet style, iron sand prison. To prevent the Root operatives from escaping, Shin Uchiha gathered more of his chakra. A massive wave of iron sand erupted from the ground, enclosing the remaining Root ninjas within an inescapable prison. Complex ceiling patterns formed along its walls, ensuring that unless they had space-time ninjutsu, escape was impossible. Earth style, hiding like a mole jutsu. One of the trapped Root ninjas formed a quick seal, attempting to soften the earth beneath him to tunnel away. The moment his hand touched the ground, the black flames leapt onto his skin. His arm withered and burned at an alarming rate, his flesh turning to ash before his horrified companion's eyes. Water style, water colliding wave. The second Root ninja quickly formed a seal, releasing a powerful stream of water toward his burning ally in an attempt to extinguish the flames. But it was futile. The black flames, enhanced by Shin's pupil power, refused to be doused, just like the infamous Amaterasu. Damn it. Realizing their situation was hopeless, the two root operatives shared a silent nod. Tsunade had just arrived near the prison when she saw them bite down on something. Shit. But before she could stop them, they crushed the poison capsules hidden in their molars. The potent toxin took effect almost instantly, snuffing out their lives in mere seconds. Tsunade skidded to a halt, watching helplessly as their bodies crumbled, consumed by the relentless black flames. Shin Uchiha, unfazed, let the flames burn them away. He wasn't about to let high-ranking root corpses go to waste. Their chakra and life energy were still ripe for harvesting. Tsunade stood there as the sand iron cage collapsed, revealing Nawaki inside. The iron sand peeled away, uncovering the young Senju sprawled on the ground, whimpering. His hands and feet were scorched red from the intense heat of the explosion. The iron sand shield had saved his life, but the aftermath of the detonation had still burned him. Tsunade's face darkened. "You stupid, idiotic little brat." Nawaki flinched, looking up in horror. If it weren't for the iron sand intervention, he would have been dead. And if that had happened, Tsunade would never be able to face their grandmother Mido, or their parents. Sis. The moment Nawaki saw Tsunade's terrifying glare, all the pain from his burns vanished. He shrank back, looking like a frightened quail. Shin Uchiha arrived just in time to witness Tsunade clenching her fist before delivering a monstrous punch to Nawaki's head. "You nearly got yourself killed, you little shit." Gah hh. The impact sent him flying several meters, his body skidding across the dirt before stopping at Shin's feet. Shin Uchiha looked down at the groaning boy and nudged him lightly with his foot. Nawaki groaned in pain but immediately snapped to attention the moment Shin tapped his forehead with his shoe. "Well? Are you dead yet?" Nawaki, still lying on the ground, raised his head like a resurrected corpse. Shin smirked. Tsunade, meanwhile, cracked her knuckles. "You should be thanking Shin. If it weren't for him, your dumbass would have been in a body bag. Now get your ass up." Nawaki scrambled to his knees, bowing toward Shin Uchiha, not sure if he should thank him or fear him. Shin just clicked his tongue, amused. "What a mess." Chapter 37 That. Hee big bro Shin, thanks a lot. Otherwise, I, the future Hokage, would have died here. Looking at Nawaki's goofy grin, Shin Uchiha resisted the urge to kick him in the face. "If you keep rushing toward death like that, one day you won't get back up. Now stop grinning like an idiot and explain what the hell happened." Even though he was annoyed, Shin still placed his hand over Nawaki's wounds and used the mystical palm jutsu to heal him first. A few moments later, Nawaki, now fully recovered, jumped up as if nothing had happened. Watching him move so easily, Shin muttered under his breath, "The Senju's vitality really is something else. They bounce back way faster than normal people. Obviously. It's just a shame that this kid is like me, no wood style. Only Grandpa had it." Tsunade, arms crossed, huffed and then turned to glare at Nawaki. Nawaki immediately shrank under her gaze, lowering his head like a scolded puppy. The near-death experience had finally made him realize just how reckless he'd been. Tsunade then glanced at the two corpses, or rather, the ashes, of the root operatives Shin had incinerated. She didn't bother asking him what technique he'd used. There was no point. Besides, since those bastards took poison, it was impossible to confirm their identities. If they had taken the bodies back to Hidden Lee Village and confronted Denzo, that old fox would have just denied everything. Tsunade clenched her fists. As much as she hated to admit it, she knew she couldn't do anything about him, not yet. For now, the priority was understanding how Nawaki even ended up in this mess. Under the combined stares of Tsunade and Shin, Nawaki spilled everything. From his perspective, this wasn't some elaborate setup. He had just wandered too far without realizing the danger. Despite that, he still looked at Shin with awe in his eyes. "Big brother Shin. Let me call you big bro from now on. Teach me that badass jutsu you used earlier." The way Shin had manipulated the iron sand to shield him had looked incredibly cool in Nawaki's eyes. Shin immediately smacked the back of his head in annoyance. "Forget it. That's magnet style, something I developed myself. You wouldn't be able to use it." "Shin's right. You should master the basics of your own clan's jutsu first." Tsunade backed him up without hesitation, effectively shutting Nawaki up. After piecing together the details, she and Shin exchanged a glance before speaking in hushed tones. "I'm guessing the third Hokage wants to use this war to erase the last remnants of the Senju." Tsunade said nothing. She couldn't say anything. Because, deep down, she knew Shin was right. Her sensei, the third Hokage, along with Denzo and the rest of the higher-ups, had all but abandoned the Senju clan. What made her blood boil even more was Denzo's involvement. The root operatives had clearly intended to take Nawaki's body. She didn't even have to think to know why. That bastard Denzo wanted to experiment on Nawaki's DNA, hoping to replicate Hashirama's wood style. Tsunade's jaw clenched. Anger surged through her veins. But even if she wanted to confront Denzo, she had no solid proof. The only thing she could do was return to camp and inform Grandma Mido about everything. You need to send Nawaki back immediately. Have your family keep a close eye on him so he doesn't run off again. Agreed. It's too dangerous here for him. Shin and Tsunade were on the same page. She turned to her younger brother. Did you hear that? You understand the situation now? Nawaki scratched his head, not daring to argue. Even if he was normally carefree, he wasn't stupid. He had heard everything Shin and Tsunade discussed. Knowing that people wanted him dead had sobered him up quickly. Just as they prepared to leave, Shin suddenly tensed. His Sharingan activated instantly, scanning the area. Ninjas were approaching. They weren't from Hidden Leaf Village. He shot a quick glance at Tsunade and Nawaki before surrounding them both in iron sand and pulling them into the shadows. Moments later, a squad of Hidden Rain Village ninjas arrived. They examined the battlefield, their expressions wary. Looks like someone triggered an explosive trap. Did they survive? Who knows? Either way, we should report back. The group exchanged a few words before quickly retreating. As they left, Shin condensed a small amount of iron sand and discreetly attached it to one of them. If his guess was correct, they were probably talking about Hanzo's next move. Hidden Rain Village was already losing ground against Hidden Leaf Village. If Tsunade's antidote was finished within a week, then Hanzo's poisonous tactics would lose their effectiveness entirely. They had no choice. If they didn't want to surrender, they had to go all in. But Shin didn't know when Hanzo would make his move, and neither did Orochimaru, Jiraiya, or Tsunade. For now, holding the current front line was the safest strategy. I placed a marker on one of them. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to track their attack plan. Let's return to camp and prepare. Hidden Rain Village won't sit around waiting for us to counter their poison. Tsunade nodded. As they made their way back, she found herself sneaking glances at Shin. He was focused, his expression sharp. And yet, despite being the same age as Nawaki, he felt far more mature, far more reliable. When did I start listening to him so naturally? As an adult, she should be the one guiding and protecting. Yet, around Shin, it felt like the roles had reversed. Strangely enough, she didn't mind. Lost in thought, she barely noticed when Shin opened his eyes again. Phew. The Rain Ninja are planning a full-scale attack on this camp within a day. Tsunade snapped back to reality. Call Orochimaru and Jiraiya. We need to discuss countermeasures. On it. She turned to leave but paused, glancing at Shin. You should dress too. Don't overwork yourself. Shin blinked. The last time Tsunade had spoken this softly to him, she had been drunk off her ass. You good? Tsunade rolled her eyes. Idiot. Just accept my concern. Then she walked away, leaving Shin both amused and slightly terrified. Man, when you act all sweet and caring while sober, it's kinda terrifying. Chapter 38. Before leaving, Tsunade couldn't help but pat her face and mutter, am I usually this fierce? She sighed, a guilty expression flashing across her face. Tsunade wasn't particularly harsh, but she wasn't gentle either. Carefree and strong-willed, her relationship with Shin Uchiha had always been one of camaraderie rather than strict hierarchy. Shaking off the unnecessary thoughts, she hurried to discuss tactical arrangements with Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and the others. By the time she returned, exhaustion weighing heavily on her, she found Shin Uchiha sleeping soundly, his head resting on Mikoto's lap. Tsunade quickly discarded any lingering feelings of sympathy she had for him earlier. Shinkan, Tsunade-sensei are back. Seeing Tsunade approach, Mikoto gently nudged Shin Uchiha. Her movements were soft, as if afraid of waking him too abruptly. Fortunately, Shin Uchiha wasn't actually asleep. He opened his eyes leisurely, his gaze settling on Tsunade as she approached. You're back. How did the strategy meeting go? He asked casually, not even bothering to sit up, his head still comfortably pillowed on Mikoto's lap. Mikoto, feeling the weight of Tsunade's stare, flushed red but didn't push him away. She was indulging him. Tsunade, suppressing a flicker of jealousy, exhaled and spoke in a serious tone, detailing the battle plans they had discussed. We'll be reallocating some of the forces from this camp to reinforce the other battlefronts. When they launch their assault, we'll hold them back here while our main force pushes directly into Hidden Rain Village. Their plan was straightforward, counter the enemy's strategy with their own. But Shin Uchiha saw a major flaw: they hadn't properly accounted for Hanzo of the Salamander. In an era where Kage-level shinobi reigned supreme, Hanzo was undoubtedly one of the strongest. Shin Uchiha preferred to avoid direct confrontation with him. But even if he voiced his concerns, it wouldn't matter. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and the others wouldn't back down just because he warned them of the threat. Only Tsunade, big, cute, and blessed in all the right places, might actually listen to him. But even then, retreating wasn't an option. If they didn't hold Hanzo back, Hidden Leaf Village's forces on other fronts would suffer devastating losses. After careful consideration, Shin Uchiha nodded slightly and chose not to interfere. For now, the plan was solid. The only question was, when Hanzo made his move, would he be able to stop him? Would he survive the encounter? He had never fought a true Kage-level opponent before. He couldn't be sure. No matter what, I won't die, even if I lose. He clenched his fists, feeling the power surging within his Sharingan. Even if he couldn't manifest the complete form of Susanoo yet, he was confident he could stand against the so-called demigod of the shinobi world. Excitement stirred in his chest, overpowering any fear. Meanwhile, within Hidden Rain Village, Hanzo stood before his assembled forces, hundreds of aim men, their faces hard with determination. Gazing down at them, Hanzo felt a surge of pride. From the moment he implanted the venom sac of the deadly black salamander into his own body as a child, he had clawed his way to power. From a mere warrior to the undisputed leader of Hidden Rain Village. From a feared shinobi to a legend whispered across nations. Now, with war at his doorstep, he was prepared. Hidden Rain Village's inevitable defeat was something he had already foreseen. Not because he was weak, far from it. But because his village was too small. Even Hidden Sand Village, the weakest of the 5 great shinobi villages, could crush them if it came down to raw power. So, this wasn't a battle he needed to win outright. No. This was about sending a message to the world. Even if Hidden Rain Village fell to Hidden Leaf Village, it wouldn't be a loss. It would prove to the world that they were strong enough to challenge the Leaf. War had long plagued Hidden Rain Village due to its unfortunate location, caught between the borders of major nations. Shinobi from all villages waged their battles on its soil, leaving the people of Rain Country to suffer. This war was his answer to that injustice. And now, he had to solidify his gains. Recently, Hidden Rain Village had crushed the Land of Iron's forces, raiding their wealth, capturing their women, and expanding their territory. Now, as the Land of Wind and the Land of Fire clashed, he had seized even more land. What mattered now was holding on to those gains, making sure Hidden Rain Village didn't just fight, but emerged stronger than ever. To do that, he needed to cripple Hidden Leaf Village's will to fight. If Tsunade cracked his poisons, all of this would be for nothing. He had to act before that happened. Hidden Rain Village will rise. The world will know that we are a force to be reckoned with. Advance. With that final war cry, Hanzo led his army forward, hundreds of aimmen marching toward Hidden Leaf Village's camp. From a distance, Shin Uchiha sensed the approaching army. He sighed at Hanzo's speech. Hidden Rain Village could barely scrape together 100 elite fighters, and yet here they were, making dramatic proclamations. Was the pre-battle speech really necessary? Suppressing a chuckle, he turned toward his allies. They're coming. Orochimaru, his pale face twisted into a grin, gave a low chuckle. Your sensory skills are remarkable, Shin Uchiha. It saves us a great deal of effort. Despite his eerie demeanor, Orochimaru was genuinely complimenting him. And at least Orochimaru was polite. Aside from his unsettling aura, he wasn't all that bad. Shin Uchiha nodded in acknowledgement. How are the preparations? Jiraiya crossed his arms. Most of our forces have moved out. Traps are set along their path. Tsunade stepped forward, pulling out a handful of small vials. These are antidote pills I developed on short notice. Her voice was firm, but there was a hint of strain. They won't completely neutralize the salamander's poison, but they'll suppress its effects long enough for treatment. They're safe to use. The others immediately took the antidotes, grateful for the precaution. Meanwhile, as Hanzo's forces advanced, they were met with a relentless barrage of explosive traps. Boom. Another trap ignited, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The already small Aimnin army lost several more men in an instant. The war had begun. Chapter 39, Hanzo Strange, There Are Too Many Traps. Hanzo of the Salamander had already noticed something was off. Setting traps on a battlefield was normal, but this was excessive. Poison gas traps, explosive tags, pitfall traps, they had encountered so many that even with constant checks, they couldn't clear them all in time. The relentless ambushes had whittled their forces down. The army that started with hundreds had now been reduced to barely over 80. The sheer loss of life sent ripples of unease through the ranks of the Hidden Rain shinobi. If it weren't for Hanzo himself leading them, morale would have collapsed entirely. Now, as they stood a few hundred meters from the Hidden Leaf Village encampment, Hanzo clenched his jaw and bellowed, "No matter what, we must kill them all. Anyone who retreats will be executed." His harsh command left no room for cowardice. With no choice but to obey, the remaining Rain shinobi advanced, each swallowing the antidote to Hanzo's toxin before charging towards the enemy camp. Summoning jutsu, Ibuse, burrow deep. Hanzo wasted no time, forming hand seals to summon his massive, poison-spewing salamander. The enormous beast slithered underground, moving into position before resurfacing with a guttural growl. Poison mist spray. Without hesitation, Ibius unleashed a thick cloud of lethal purple gas, blanketing the battlefield. Hanzo followed up by weaving additional hand seals, using wind style to push the toxic fog towards the Hidden Leaf village stronghold. Looks like it's time. High above the camp, a figure stood watching the unfolding battle, a wide grin stretching across his face. Shin Uchiha's crimson eyes gleamed with exhilaration. Magnet style, iron sand tsunami. Clapping his hands together, he sent a surge of chakra into the earth. The ground trembled as an enormous wave of iron sand erupted into the air, towering over the battlefield like a black tidal wave. Orochimaru and Jiraiya, witnessing Shin's chakra surge for the first time, exchanged looks of disbelief. This isn't normal. The intensity of his chakra was overwhelming, far beyond what they expected. Even Tsunade, watching from a distance, felt a pit form in her stomach. In her memory, Shin was strong, but not like this. His presence now eclipsed even their teachers. Before they could dwell on it further, the iron sand wave came crashing down, swallowing the approaching rain shinobi whole. Despair flashed across their faces just before the tsunami buried them beneath tons of crushing metal. Boom. The battlefield trembled under the weight of the attack. The shinobi caught in its wake had no chance. Their bodies were mercilessly crushed, suffocated, and torn apart by the sheer force of the attack. Shin's right eye gleamed ominously, its intricate pattern twisting as he activated his next move. Soul transference, sacrifice. A dark fire ignited deep beneath the iron sand, unseen by all. The 80+ trap-drained shinobi were suddenly engulfed in jet-black flames. Their life force and chakra were forcibly extracted, siphoning into Shin's body like a rushing river. His left eye spun rapidly, processing the immense energy influx. Wind, earth, and fire. Good. I'll construct, particle style, now. Now that he had a constant source of vitality restoring his pupil power, Shin didn't hold back. Lowering his head, his Mangekyo Sharingan whirled as he forcibly merged the 3 chakra natures within his body. Once. Twice. 10 times. The process was grueling. His vision blurred, his limbs trembled, and his body screamed in exhaustion. But when he lifted his gaze again, he knew. He had succeeded. Orochimaru and the others, watching his condition, were stunned. Just moments ago, Shin had seemed unstoppable. Now, he was barely standing. Did he burn through his chakra using a forbidden technique? Jiraiya muttered. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Regardless of how he did it, Shin had just decimated a massive portion of Hanzo's forces. That was undeniable. Before they could recover, the poisonous fog rolled closer. Without hesitation, Jiraiya and Orochimaru rallied the Hidden Leaf village shinobi. Wind style, great breakthrough. A storm of wind-style jutsu erupted from the Hidden Leaf village forces, colliding with the advancing poison cloud. Hanzo, watching from atop Ibius, narrowed his eyes behind his mask. They anticipated my moves. Who leaked our strategy? His fists clenched as he mentally cycled through possible traitors. But he had no time to dwell on it now. His forces were decimated. Victory was slipping through his fingers. Only 2 options remained, retreat or fight to the death. He inhaled sharply, his mind made up. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade. His gaze burned with resolve. If I take them hostage, Hidden Rain can still save face. With newfound determination, he issued a command to Ibius. Go. The colossal salamander lunged forward as Hanzo formed a new set of seals. Ninja art, concealing mist jutsu. A dense fog swept across the battlefield, shrouding everything in a thick haze. Hidden within the cover, Hanzo charged straight at the Hidden Leaf village camp. The moment he closed in, he tore off his mask and exhaled. A cloud of highly concentrated poison flooded the area. This time, he held nothing back. Every last ounce of toxin stored in Ibius's poison sac poured forth, catalyzed by Hanzo's chakra into an even deadlier mist. And this time, it wouldn't be so easily dispelled. Before anyone could react, Hanzo launched his next attack. Water style, poisoned water dragon bullet. A massive water dragon surged forward, its swirling body laced with the airborne poison. It was a monstrous sight. A writhing, liquid serpent, infused with toxin so potent that a single touch could melt flesh. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and Tsunade could evade it, but the shinobi behind them weren't as lucky. A dozen Hidden Leaf village shinobi were struck instantly. Their bodies detonated upon impact, internal organs bursting as poisoned water tore through them. Screams echoed across the battlefield. Nearby, shinobi who had only been splashed by the toxic liquid clutched at their faces in agony. Their skin blistered, eyes melted in their sockets, and throats closed as they collapsed, convulsing. The air reeked of blood, death, and despair. Hanzo pulled his mask back on, surveying the devastation with cold eyes. "Now," he muttered, turning toward the stunned trio before him. "Let's see if you three can survive this." Chapter 40, versus Hanzo Water Style, Water Dragon Jutsu. Hanzo, who had successfully launched his attack, quickly formed a new set of seals and unleashed a deadly follow-up technique aimed at Shin Uchiha, who remained motionless. At that exact moment, Shin Uchiha, having just completed his hand-drawn portrait, abruptly lifted his head. Fire Style, Great Dragon Flame. Clapping his hands together, Shin Uchiha compressed a vast amount of chakra within his body, condensing it before expelling it from his mouth. A massive dragon of pure fire materialized in the air. Z. The intense heat vaporized the lingering poisonous mist in the atmosphere. Under Shin Uchiha's precise control, the flaming dragon suddenly split into 5 ferocious fire dragons. Boom. One of the fire dragons collided with the incoming water dragon and obliterated it in an instant, causing a massive wave of steam to rise. Utilizing the strong updraft created by the high-temperature flames, Shin Uchiha carried the remains of the poisonous mist into the sky. The remaining 4 fire dragons charged forward, launching an all-out assault on Hanzo, who sat atop his summoned salamander, striking from all sides. This level of fire style. Did Hidden Leaf Village send an elite from the Uchiha clan? Even before the flame dragons reached him, the oppressive heat waves forced Hanzo to acknowledge the devastating power behind them. Water style, instantaneous water body. Unwilling to take the attack head-on, Hanzo swiftly formed a one-handed seal and instantly liquefied his body, vanishing into a pool of water just as the dragon struck. However, his summoned salamander was not as fortunate. The 4 remaining fire dragons slammed into the massive creature, detonating upon impact. The force of the explosion hurled it hundreds of meters away, the extreme heat searing its thick, armored hide and tearing flesh from bone. The acrid scent of burnt flesh filled the battlefield. Though gravely injured, the salamander's durability kept it from being completely incapacitated. Seeing that Hanzo had been forced into retreat, Jiraiya and Orochimaru immediately capitalized on the opening. Earth style, swamp of the underworld. Orochimaru slammed both palms against the ground, instantly turning the area beneath the salamander into a deep, viscous swamp. Jiraiya, understanding his comrade's intention, inhaled deeply before releasing a potent mixture of oil-infused chakra from his mouth. Fire style, flame bullet. A massive fireball shot toward the struggling salamander, fueled by the flammable oil. Though it lacked the sheer destructive force of Shin Uchiha's earlier attack, it was still lethal. Water style, water wall. Hanzo, ever the master of water techniques, swiftly erected a towering wall of water to intercept the incoming flames. He broke free from the swamp and rushed toward Jiraiya and Orochimaru, wielding his infamous chain sickle, its razor edges coated with deadly poison. While the 3 clashed, Tsunade bit her thumb and slammed her palm to the ground. Summoning Jutsu, Gatsu. A giant slug from the Shikatsu forest materialized in a burst of smoke. Understanding Tsunade's unspoken command, Gatsu immediately divided into smaller clones, slithering across the battlefield to retrieve the poisoned victims, dragging them to safety for treatment. Tsunade hurried to Shin Uchiha, her face filled with concern. "Are you hurt?" Shin Uchiha, who had momentarily faltered, quickly regained his composure. "No, just a temporary breathing issue. I'm fine." He nodded slightly, eyes fixed on Hanzo, who had regained the upper hand against Jiraiya and Orochimaru. The remaining Aimnin under Hanzo's command were nearing their limits, their vitality and chakra being steadily drained by Shin's earlier sand-iron assault. As their bodies crumbled, their remnants merged into Shin Uchiha's being. Though this couldn't replenish the enormous chakra expenditure from his failed attempt at deducing particle style, it was enough to sustain him in battle. During his confrontation with Hanzo, Shin Uchiha made a surprising realization. So this is the infamous Hanzo. Without his poison, he wouldn't be nearly as formidable. If one ignored the toxic mists, Hanzo was strong, but not an insurmountable threat at the Kage level. However, for Jiraiya and Orochimaru, who had only recently reached Kage level, Hanzo remained a terrifying enemy. Lion Mane Jutsu. Jiraiya channeled his chakra into his hair, extending and hardening it into a lion-headed mass, attempting to ensnare Hanzo. Yet, before his attack could land, Hanzo's chain sickle flashed through the air, effortlessly severing the elongated strands. Swish. Predicting Jiraiya's attack route, Hanzo's sickle found its mark, neatly cutting through the hair before it could wrap around him. Seeing his technique fail, Jiraiya immediately leaped back. Orochimaru met his gaze, and the two executed their summoning jutsu simultaneously. Summoning jutsu, Game Abunda. Summoning jutsu, Manda. With 2 bursts of smoke, The giant red toad wielding a massive tanto and the colossal purple serpent slithered onto the battlefield. Tsunade and Shin Uchiha rejoined the fight at that moment. Faced with an all-out assault from all sides, Hanzo sneered behind his gas mask. "If that's all you have, then try and kill me." His summon, Ibuse, had been quietly biding its time. Now, its bloated cheeks signaled that it was ready. After 5 minutes of building up toxins, the massive salamander released its devastating poison fog once again. From its gaping maw, a nearly liquefied purple miasma surged outward, engulfing the battlefield. Shin Uchiha reacted instantly, yanking Tsunade toward him before vanishing using instant transmission. Reappearing dozens of meters away. Jiraiya and Orochimaru, however, were not as quick. Huff. The dense, deadly poison engulfed them head-on. Having consumed experimental antidote pills beforehand, they survived the exposure, but their strength rapidly deteriorated. Gamabunta and Manda, however, were not so lucky. The overwhelming toxicity took immediate effect, bringing them both crashing down. The two giant summons, now paralyzed, glared at their summoners with pure betrayal. "You summoned us just to get poisoned?" Their eyes screamed. "Get them to Katsu. Only she can heal them." Jiraiya and Orochimaru, while retreating, shouted their desperate plea to Tsunade. They hadn't expected Hanzo to have another poison attack prepared. Tsunade scoffed. "You two are too reckless. My student reacts faster than both of you." Jiraiya and Orochimaru hesitated to argue. Tsunade had been saved only because of Shin Uchiha's quick thinking, after all. Shin Uchiha, eyes locked onto the darkening storm clouds above, unsheathed his katana. "I'll hold him off. Recover as fast as you can." Without another word, he vanished, his sheer speed leaving even his allies momentarily stunned. Chapter 41, Kirin So Fast. Hanzo's pupil shrank as he watched Shin Uchiha, who had been about to strike him down, suddenly raise his sword to counter an incoming attack. Clang! The chain sickle's blade clashed violently against the samurai sword, sparks bursting into the rain-drenched battlefield. Having failed his initial strike, Shin Uchiha's eyes flickered, revealing his 3 Tomoe Sharingan. An Uchiha. The experienced Hanzo of the salamander immediately shut his eyes and used his right arm to push Shin Uchiha back several meters, avoiding direct eye contact. "You sure know your Uchiha lore." Shin Uchiha smirked and immediately channeled lightning chakra into his blade. ZT. Chidori blade, Mercury. Lightning crackled violently around the sword as Shin infused it with pure chakra, further enhancing its cutting power. With a single-handed grip, he lunged at Hanzo from the side, electricity roaring through the battlefield. Tsunade, ever the opportunist in battle, coordinated with him and struck with overwhelming force. Superhuman strength, Iron Fist. By integrating the Iron Body technique into her monstrous strength, she momentarily hardened her muscles. The sheer force made her punch exponentially stronger, capable of shattering steel with ease. Hanzo, who dared not open his eyes and whose hearing was disrupted by the buzzing electricity, swiftly formed a one-handed seal. Fire style, exploding flame formation. Unnoticed until now, a series of pre-planted explosive tags buried beneath the mud shot up into the air. Before they could react, the tags latched onto the legs of Shin Uchiha and Tsunade, forcing them into a trap. With his free hand, Hanzo swung the sickle's chain in a wide arc. Thwack! Thwack! The heavy links struck both Shin and Tsunade, sending them flying backward. Suspended in midair, the explosive tags on their legs were about to detonate. Jiraiya and Orochimaru, still weakened by the lingering poison, had no chance of intervening in time. Yet, despite their dire predicament, neither Shin nor Tsunade showed any signs of panic. Iron Body, both warriors tensed their muscles and channeled their chakra, rendering their bodies as hard as steel. Boom! A deafening explosion rocked the battlefield, flames shooting high into the stormy sky. Got them. Hanzo's eyes flickered open, momentarily displaying a triumphant smirk. However, his victory was short-lived. Thud. 2 figures dropped from the sky, landing heavily on the shattered ground. Their torn pant legs revealed their injuries, or rather, what little was left of them. Instead of charred flesh and broken limbs, only minor burns marred their skin. Ian Seal, release, healing. Both warriors activated their stored chakra reserves, rapidly regenerating their wounds. Within mere breaths, the burn marks vanished entirely, their legs looking as pristine as before. The contrast of their flawless skin against the dark, rain-soaked battlefield made for an eerie sight. Seeing this, Hanzo's heart sank. TCH. Tactically, I'm still far below your level. Your swordsmanship and strategic prowess are also superior to mine. Shin Uchiha sighed as he observed the infamous Hanzo of the salamander before him. Had it not been for the predictive prowess of his Kagura mind's eye and the enhanced perception of the Sharingan, he would have struggled to keep up with Hanzo's sheer battlefield cunning. Their difference in combat experience was evident. The seasoned war veteran's mastery of tactics far exceeded his own. This realization struck Shin deeply. Most of his battle experience had come from fighting his own shadow clones. True battles against enemies of this caliber were still a rarity for him. "You've impressed me, Hanzo," Shin admitted, rolling his shoulders, "but it's time to end this." With that, he loosened his grip and let his sword drop. The blade stabbed deep into the ground, sending ripples through the rain-soaked earth. Hanzo, along with Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru, all stared in confusion. "What do you mean end? Even if you all attack together, you are still no match for me." Hanzo sneered and tightened his grip on his sickle's chain. The title of demigod of the shinobi world was not something he would relinquish easily. His poison salamander had almost finished recharging its toxic fumes. Once ready, he was confident he could wipe out both Shin and Tsunade in one strike. "No," Shin interrupted, "it's already over." Lightning crackled in his palm as he flung a bolt into the sky. Bzzzt. The moment the Chidori vanished into the storm clouds, the heavens trembled. Rumble. A surge of thunderous energy tore through the sky, merging with the storm above. The dark clouds churned violently, gathering into a massive vortex of raw power. It was an overwhelming force, one that sent shivers down the spines of all who witnessed it. Jiraiya's eyes widened. "No way." Lightning crackled and twisted, taking shape. A monstrous beast formed from pure electricity roared as it solidified, a mighty Kirin, wreathed in divine thunder, its glowing eyes locked onto the battlefield below. "Lightning style, Kirin." Shin Uchiha whispered the words like a death sentence, raising his hand before slicing it downward in a commanding motion. "Ro-Awar." The colossal lightning beast let out a bone-rattling cry, shaking the earth as it descended with blinding speed. Hanzo froze. The sheer brilliance of the lightning blocked out his vision. Before he could even attempt to react, the Kailine crashed into the ground. Bomb. A pillar of lightning erupted, engulfing everything in a sea of destruction. Orochimaru and Jiraiya, still 100 meters away, were lifted off the ground by the shockwave. At the heart of the devastation, within the blinding white light, Shin Uchiha stood firm. With one arm, he held Tsunade close, shielding her within the golden ribcage of his Susanoo, resisting the Kailan's catastrophic force. Moments later, as the storm of destruction subsided, Shin dismissed the skeletal form of Susanoo. "Tsunade," he muttered in a husky voice, "don't tell anyone about this, What?" Dazed, Tsunade blinked, still trying to process what had just happened. Shin smirked and, with a swift motion, delivered a firm slap to her round backside. Smack. The impact sent a pleasing ripple through the soft flesh. "Ah! You bastard!" Tsunade's face turned red as she instinctively rubbed the sore spot, her confusion deepening. That lightning style. And that skeleton just now. The sheer amount of information overwhelmed her, her brain struggling to piece everything together. "Just don't think too hard about it." Shin teased, pinching her side for good measure before swiftly dashing off toward the center of the impact zone, still clutching her stinging backside. Tsunade's eye twitched in a mixture of embarrassment and fury. Glancing around, she found the battlefield still shrouded in smoke and dust. Relieved that no one else had seen what just transpired, she exhaled deeply, before muttering a string of curses under her breath. Chapter 42. It's okay if no one sees it, otherwise, it's too embarrassing. It's not necessary to bring people back to their senses like this. He's not a child anymore. Tsunade murmured in her heart, staring at Shin Uchiha's back. She recalled the golden skeletal structure that had just protected her, and couldn't help but think of the recorded accounts in the Senju archives about the divine power the Uchiha clan wielded upon awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan. According to rumors, it was the power Madara Uchiha himself had mastered, capable of rivaling her grandfather, Senju Hashirama. But up until now, she had never seen an Uchiha manifest it. Today, she had seen it, in Shin Uchiha. Does this mean he's awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan? That's absurd. He's only 12. Even though he carries himself like an adult, his body is still. He's still a child. Tsunade was shaken, but Shin Uchiha, on the other hand, was filled with nothing but exhilaration. As he stepped closer to the lifeless corpse of the salamander, he found the dying form of Hanzo beneath it. His reaction speed was truly impressive. At the last moment, he had used his summoned creature as a shield against the attack. Impressive. Shin mused. But against absolute power and overwhelming numbers, such efforts are meaningless. You. Hanzo struggled to open his eyes, attempting to say something. Before he could finish, Shin Uchiha grabbed him by the throat, lifting him effortlessly. Kagetsuchi. Black flames erupted from his palm, engulfing Hanzo's body entirely. Simultaneously, another surge of those same flames shot toward the lifeless salamander corpse beside them. Mangekyo. Hanzo gasped in horror, barely able to voice his final words. The searing flames of Amaterasu devoured him. His flesh disintegrated, his body shriveling until nothing remained but a pile of ashes. Shin Uchiha closed his eyes, feeling the surge of vitality and chakra coursing through him. A moment later, he opened them again, his 8-pointed Mangekyo gleaming ominously. Half of my left eye's chakra has recovered, and my vision remains unaffected. My physical capabilities and chakra levels have improved across the board. And it seems I've gained resistance to poisons. Glancing at the pool of venom left behind by Hanzo's summon, Shin made a bold decision. He sliced his own palm and allowed the venom to seep into the open wound. With the ability of life return, he could manipulate his body's cellular structure at will. If the toxins proved too dangerous, he would simply discard the infected cells. The poison spread rapidly through his bloodstream. Yet, nothing happened. His body neutralized the toxins effortlessly. The combination of the Uzumaki lineage's life force and the antibodies obtained from Hanzo has made me resistant to poison, even to the infamous salamander venom. A slow, wicked grin spread across Shin's face. He understood the gravity of this. Even Hanzo, despite his own immunity to poisons, could still succumb to the venom of his own summon under the right conditions. But Shin, he was now immune to all poisons. As a shinobi who often employed poison in battle, he knew exactly how valuable this was. No longer would he need to rely on merely coating his blades or iron sand with poison. Now, he could unleash large-scale toxic attacks without hesitation. A grin tugged at his lips as the possibilities raced through his mind. Seeing this unsettling smile, Tsunade, who had come closer, felt a shiver run down her spine. He's definitely thinking of something terrible, she thought instinctively. At that moment, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and a group of Hidden Leaf Village shinobi arrived. Upon seeing the remains, or rather, the absence, of Hanzo, realization dawned upon them. Shin Uchiha had slain Hanzo of the Salamander. Lord Shin Uchiha. Lord Shin Uchiha. The first voice called out, and soon, every Hidden Leaf Village ninja present followed suit, their cheers echoing across the battlefield. In their eyes, Shin Uchiha had surpassed even the Sannin. Jiraiya and Orochimaru exchanged complicated glances. No matter how much they denied it, the Kirin Shin had unleashed moments ago was strong enough to annihilate them. A 12-year-old who had already outgrown them in power. Orochimaru's golden eyes flickered as he studied Shin's Mangekyo. The Uchiha bloodline. Its potential is monstrous. Compared to Jiraiya and Orochimaru, Tsunade's feelings were simpler. She was genuinely happy for Shin. Well, aside from his little antics earlier. While they secured the battlefield, the other fronts in Hidden Rain Village received word of Hanzo's defeat. Hanzo had withdrawn a significant number of elite-trained shinobi for his failed offensive, and Tsunade's earlier strategy had ensured Hidden Leaf Village's numerical superiority at key positions. As a result, within hours, the battle turned overwhelmingly in Hidden Leaf Village's favor. The Hidden Rain Village fell. Hanzo's death sent shockwaves throughout the shinobi world. As the news spread, so too did the names of those who had brought him down. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru, the students of the third Hokage, were henceforth known as the legendary Sannin of Hidden Leaf Village. And as for Shin Uchiha, the young shinobi who had slain the demigod of the shinobi world, a new title emerged. Hidden Leaf Village's Thunder God. When the nickname reached Shin, he could only stare, speechless. Do people really love giving out titles that much? He sighed. Did anyone even ask for my opinion? I'm not just good at lightning style, you know. Unfortunately, his protests did nothing to stop the moniker from spreading. The entire ninja world had already accepted it. Back in Hidden Leaf Village, the Uchiha clan's more militant faction was ecstatic. The elder, Shin Uchiha-ji, practically grinned from ear to ear each day, eagerly awaiting Shin's return so he could assume leadership of their faction. Even the more pacifist members of the clan began to view Shin in a different light. Many started shifting their loyalties towards the hawkish faction. After all, where was Fugaku Uchiha? Nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, Shin Uchiha, who was younger, had already carved his name into history. The ripples of this battle had only just begun. Chapter 43, Reaction. Some celebrated, while others drowned in despair. As the Uchiha clan rejoiced, the third Hokage and Denzo sat in the Hokage's office, their expressions grim. At 12 years old, how could he coordinate with Tsunade and the others to assassinate Hanzo of the Salamander? Hiruzen Sarutobi stared at the intelligence report from the Anbu, reading it over and over, yet he still found it hard to believe. It was absurd. At that age, the boy wasn't even a jonin yet. Denzo's face darkened as he exhaled slowly before speaking. Is there a possibility that this is the power of the Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan? It is said that once an Uchiha awakens the Mangekyo, they gain strength on par with the Kage level. The third Hokage took a deep drag from his pipe, his face concealed momentarily behind a veil of smoke. Though Denzo's claim seemed far-fetched, it was not without precedent. His mind drifted back to his younger days when Hashirama Senju had led them into battle. He recalled Kagami Uchiha's final stand, how, after their teacher's demise, Kagami had awakened his Mangekyo and annihilated the pursuing forces of the Kinkaku squad in a single, decisive strike. Even from several kilometers away, Hiruzen could still remember the towering form of Susanoo. Its blade alone had torn through the landscape, making mountains tremble. Even with his current strength, he wasn't certain he could have bested Kagami at that moment. Knocking the ash from his pipe, the third Hokage finally spoke. This hasn't been confirmed yet. What is certain, however, is that Shin Uchiha has developed a lightning-style technique strong enough to take down a Kage-level opponent. In any case, this Uchiha brat is dangerous. His existence alone threatens us. Denzo's tone grew sharper. Last time, so many Senju clan remnants returned safely from Hidden Ecchi village. I suspect he was the one behind it. Denzo always assumed the worst, but this time, his theory had merit. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes, recalling how Shin Uchiha had personally escorted an orphan from the Uzumaki clan back to Hidden Leaf village. That alone had been suspicious. We must remain vigilant. Your dear student, Tsunade, might side with the Uchiha because of this boy. Denzo warned. His voice carried a bitter edge. Her brother, Nawaki, is alive and well now. He didn't die on the battlefield as you wanted. Hiruzen's face turned even grimmer. His goal had been to further weaken the Senju clan's influence in Hidden Leaf village. Without a successor, they would eventually fade into obscurity. But now, things had deviated drastically from his plans. He unconsciously touched the wound on his face, a scar left by Uzumaki Mido's wrath. She had nearly torn Hidden Leaf village apart when she learned the truth about Nawaki's survival. If not for his swift promises and concessions, she might have actually killed him in her fury. She was old, nearing her end, but as the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, she was still someone he could not afford to anger. This time, his actions had only been subtle manipulations. If he had directly acted against Nawaki, Mito would have turned against him completely. After careful consideration, the third Hokage's expression hardened. The plan against the Senju clan will be shelved for now. Shin Uchiha's reputation has grown too large, we must suppress him. He will not participate in the upcoming war. Denzo, monitor his movements, but do not act recklessly. We will decide our course later. The escalating war remained the primary concern. Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Sand Village were already at each other's throats, and Hidden Rain Village had only just fallen. Hiruzen had to monitor the movements of the other hidden villages as well. There were too many pieces on the board, and he couldn't afford to make rash decisions regarding Shin Uchiha. Denzo scowled, his anger barely contained. We already see the threat he poses to Hidden Leaf Village, yet you still hesitate? Hiruzen, which side are you on? Denzo slammed his fist onto the desk. Shin is set to become the leader of the Uchiha's Hawk faction. If he ascends to the position of clan head, the entire Uchiha clan will become a disaster. Hiruzen merely cast a cold glance his way. Denzo. I am the Hokage. You are the root. Do not forget your place. I even covered for you when you sent the route after Nawaki. That reckless decision of yours brought unnecessary trouble onto me. Denzo stiffened. I know you're the Hokage. No need to rub it in. He thought bitterly. If I hadn't hesitated back then, you would never have taken the title from me. You speak as though I acted alone, as if you weren't complicit. Resentment festered deep within him. He had never forgotten that fateful day when their teacher, Tobirama Senju, chose to be the bait. In that moment of hesitation, he had lost his chance. Hiruzen had stepped forward instead, securing his path to becoming Hokage. That bitterness had never faded. Humphrey. Denzo shot him a glare before turning on his heel and storming out. After their discussion concluded, the orders were relayed. Meanwhile, in Hidden Rain Village, Shin Uchiha and Tsunade had been stationed there for nearly a month. The old man finally sent word for us to return to Hidden Leaf Village. Says the situation isn't urgent. Tsunade said, waving the sealed letter in front of the others. She glanced at Shin Uchiha, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya, none of whom seemed surprised. If this had been an important order, it would have arrived much sooner. The delay made it clear, there was nothing of urgency. Is the war in the Land of Wind already settled? They don't need us? Orochimaru frowned. He had planned to use this war to build his reputation for his future bid as Hokage. Hidden Leaf Village's decision displeased him. Jiraiya merely stretched and yawned. Who knows? But if the old man says we don't need to worry about it, That means we get to relax. Tsunade sighed and turned to Shin Uchiha. Shin, should we return or stay in Hidden Rain Village? She was indifferent to either choice. Over time, she had come to trust Shin's judgment more than her own. Shin took a bite of roasted boar meat that Mikoto had prepared for him and pondered for a moment. The third Hokage wasn't planning to act against them yet. As long as things hadn't escalated into outright conflict, returning to Hidden Leaf Village was the best course of action. Before we leave, let's deal with the chaos here. Some Hidden Leaf Village shinobi have been looting and killing civilians. We'll clean up the mess and send them back in batches. His tone was calm, yet decisive. Hidden Rain Village had been devastated in the war, and now, as the defeated side, it had no means to resist. Many Hidden Leaf Village shinobi had taken advantage of the situation to pillage and indulge in their bloodlust. It was a common occurrence in war. Even if Tsunade and the others disapproved, they couldn't oversee every single soldier. But Shin wasn't doing this out of morality. He had another goal. Nagato and Konan, he wanted to find them before anyone else did. Chapter 44, Konan Nagato had been implanted with the Rinnegan by Madara Uchiha, which meant Shin Uchiha had to find him in advance. He couldn't attack him immediately, but he could mark him. When Madara Uchiha eventually died, Shin might be able to sit back and reap the rewards, absorbing the power of the Rinnegan for himself. In Shin's grand plan, obtaining the Rinnegan was a key step towards surpassing his current limits. With its power, he might evolve his Mangekyo Sharingan into the eternal Mangekyo or even awaken the Rinnegan himself. After all, these were the eyes of the divine, and their abilities should theoretically propel him to the next stage. If that plan failed, then he would simply have to find another way. Either way, with the ability of his right eye, soul, sacrifice, Shin could function as a pseudo-eternal Mangekyo user as long as he managed his abilities wisely. As for his secondary objective, finding Konan, that was purely out of personal interest. Was it so wrong to appreciate a cute little girl? And knowing how stunning she would grow up to be, wouldn't it be ideal to take her now and raise her properly? Train her into the perfect kunoichi? He already had Uzumaki Kanako in his household, he wouldn't mind adding Konan to the mix. Tsunade and Mikoto Uchiha, unaware of Shin's true motivations, saw him as a kind-hearted man. Even Jiraiya was somewhat moved by the younger Uchiha's apparent compassion. Jiraiya, already troubled by the state of the Hidden Rain Village, had been considering staying to offer some kind of aid. I'll head to Hidden Rain Village first. Tsunade-sensei, Mikoto, you two should return to camp and pack up our things. Shin instructed. All right. Mikoto and I will take care of it. Tsunade agreed, nodding before leading Mikoto away. At this point, Mikoto Uchiha already bore the diamond-shaped mark on her forehead, identical to Tsunade's. After a month of rigorous training, she had mastered the Yin Seal. During that same month, Shin had devoted himself to refining his mastery over particle style, and discreetly obtaining summoning contracts from Jiraiya and Orochimaru. With Tsunade vouching for him, neither of them refused when he expressed interest in choosing a summoning beast. Offering a scroll wasn't the issue, the real question was whether the summons would choose him. High-level contracts such as Ecchi Cave, Mount Myabaku, and Shikatsu Forest were the ones doing the selecting, not the other way around. From Jiraiya and Orochimaru's perspectives, Shin's approach, casting a wide net, was understandable. However, they had no idea that he didn't give a damn about the summons themselves. He was after something far more valuable, Sage Mode. I should start by learning Slug Sage Mode from Tsunade first, then test whether the other two can work for me. Tsunade might put in a good word for him, but for Myabaku and Ecchi Cave, he was on his own. Shin wasn't foolish enough to barge in and demand their power. Who knew how strong the elders of those places truly were? Each of them had lived for millennia, true monsters in every sense of the word. Shin preferred to assume the worst and estimate their strength as beyond Kage level. With a heavy mind, he once again stepped into Hidden Rain Village. Thanks to its climate, the village rained almost incessantly, 8 days out of 10. Today, at least, it was a mere drizzle. It was no wonder Henzo the Salamander sought to expand his country's borders. With terrain like this, developing infrastructure was a nightmare. Despite the shinobi world being at a semi-modern level, the contradictions were absurd. There were sofas, televisions, and radios, yet the majority of the population still survived through subsistence farming. If I ever get control of the entire shinobi world, I'll push for major reforms. Shin muttered to himself. At least introduce cell phones and computers, otherwise, what's left to do besides training and clapping cheeks with my women? With that stray thought, he resumed his search of Hidden Rain Village. The previous war had devastated the village, wiping out most of its male population. The streets were now filled primarily with women and young girls. That was the fundamental problem, there were too many girls who resembled Konan at this stage in her life. It had already been nearly 2 weeks, and he still hadn't found her. Yet, the moment he appeared, flocks of little girls ran up to him, excitedly surrounding him in groups, their faces filled with hope and admiration. "All right, line up. Everyone gets food." Outside a store owned by a wealthy merchant, Shin pushed open the doors and retrieved the rice porridge and side dishes provided by his generous benefactor. After spending weeks distributing food, his reputation in Hidden Rain Village had reached divine status. If it weren't for lack of funds, the villagers would have erected a statue of him by now. As for where he obtained the food, part of it came from hypnotizing and controlling said wealthy merchant. The rest came from his use of wood style to forcefully cultivate rice. Along with the bacon he cured from hunted wild animals and pickled vegetables supplied by the merchant, these provisions were keeping countless orphans alive. Most importantly, the rogue ninjas lurking in Hidden Rain Village and the Hidden Leaf Village forces wouldn't dare steal food from Lord Shin Uchiha. In Hidden Rain Village, food was survival itself. "Lord Shin, me too. Me. Me." A chorus of young voices rang out as the girls crowded closer, desperate yet disciplined. Thanks to his prior instructions, they all lined up obediently instead of rushing in a frenzy. As he distributed food, another thought crossed Shin's mind. I might as well install a puppet leader in Hidden Rain Village. That way, I can keep indirect control of this village even after I leave. He couldn't stay here forever, after all. And once he left, what would become of these little girls? Shin wasn't one to act purely out of kindness and then walk away. If he was going to play God, he might as well do it properly. Considering Hidden Rain Village's location, right at the intersection of multiple major nations, having a firm grip on it was a strategically sound move. And for him, this was an easy task. His Mangekyo Sharingan's hypnotic abilities were so potent that even a Kage-level ninja caught off guard would struggle to break free. In Hidden Rain Village's current state, there weren't even any Kage-level shinobi left. A mere Chunin was considered strong here. With this plan added to his agenda, Shin finished handing out the last of the food. As he shut the shop doors and prepared to resume his search, a small figure cautiously peeked out from a nearby alleyway. A little girl with tattered clothes and sharp, guarded eyes, her short blue hair messy, her pale skin smeared with dirt, hesitantly stepped forward. As Shin turned to leave, she finally mustered the courage to speak. Stepping onto the wet, muddy ground, she slowly walked up to him. Lifting her round, dirt-streaked face, she murmured softly, Is there any food left? I don't need much. Just a little bit." She spoke timidly, her voice barely above a whisper. And when Shin's piercing gaze fell upon her, she instinctively lowered her head, as if afraid to meet his eyes. Chapter 45, Conan, 2, You want to eat, right? Then be confident and look up at me. Looking at the little girl in front of him, Shin Uchiha smiled and reached out, gently brushing the dust off her purple-blue hair. Hearing his soft voice, the panic in the girl's heart gradually subsided. She hesitantly raised her head, her bright orange eyes meeting Shin Uchiha's gaze for a brief moment before she quickly looked away. But when she realized she wasn't being scolded or hit, she slowly lifted her head again, this time holding his gaze for a bit longer. "That's good. You've been hiding in the shadows all this time, but you need to be braver. It's all right now." Shin ruffled her hair before turning towards the shop's entrance. "I'll heat up the leftovers for you. Go inside and clean up first." With that, Shin Uchiha, who had been about to close up for the night, turned back, reopened the door, and led the girl inside. Feeling a warmth she hadn't known since her parents' death, the 6-year-old girl couldn't help but tear up. I don't want to trouble you," she whispered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I just need some food." How could Shin Uchiha, who had finally found his target, let Conan leave so easily? "Don't be so reserved." He flashed a reassuring smile. "I'm Shin Uchiha. I'm only 12, but I guess I'm just taller than most." Hearing that the handsome boy in front of her was only 12, just 6 years older than herself, Conan's orange eyes widened. 12? Why are you taller than most adults?" "Maybe I just eat well," Shin replied vaguely, dodging the truth. In reality, his rapid growth wasn't just due to nutrition. The abilities he had cultivated had enhanced his physical strength over the past 2 years. Jutsus derived from deep meditation, chakra refinement, and combat discipline had strengthened his body far beyond a normal child's. Conan glanced down at her own frail frame, her malnourished body stark in contrast. Her thoughts darkened for a moment, but before she could dwell on them, Shin gently pulled her further inside. Behind the shop, there was a small, separate living space. Other than occasional visits from servants who came to clean, it remained empty most of the time. "I'll heat up some water for you. There are fresh clothes inside. Pick whatever fits." Not giving her a chance to refuse, Shin set up everything for her. After realizing that he was a child like her, Conan let down some of her wariness. He didn't seem like an adult who would take advantage of her. Without much resistance, she accepted his kindness. As she soaked in the warm water, Conan felt her body relax for the first time in what seemed like forever. Her delicate, dirt-covered face was soon revealed to be quite beautiful despite her young age. The dust and grime that had masked her features washed away, revealing pale skin beneath. But the malnutrition was evident, her limbs were too thin, and an unhealthy pallor still clung to her. Putting on the clean clothes Shin had provided, Conan hesitantly stepped toward the dining table. Her eyes fixated on the hot food. She swallowed instinctively. Shin, watching her with a small smile, found the sight amusing. Conan noticed his gaze and immediately flushed, looking down shyly. Even though she was just 6, she had been forced to mature faster than other children. She knew the difference between men and women, and this was the first time a boy had looked at her like this. But unlike the fear she usually associated with men, this was different. His gaze wasn't predatory, it held warmth. She found herself feeling something she hadn't in a long time, joy. Just as Shin was about to say something, Conan's stomach let out a loud growl. The awkward silence that followed made her cheeks turn an even deeper red. Her hands clenched her clothes tightly as her embarrassment deepened. Shin couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha ha. Don't hold back if you're hungry. Just eat slowly, alright? Still flustered, Conan nodded and sat down. She took small, careful bites at first, but as soon as the taste hit her tongue, her self-control wavered. She ate faster and faster. Shin noticed this and gently reminded her, slow down. Your stomach won't handle too much all at once. Hearing his concern, Conan tried her best to pace herself, silently memorizing his words. As they ate, Shin asked about her circumstances. With her heart slightly more open now, Conan hesitated but eventually began to share her story. Brother Shin, my name is Conan. She rarely used honorifics, but something about Shin made her want to address him more intimately. My parents. They were forced to the front lines a year ago. They should be dead by now. Her voice was even, but her orange eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Shin mentally calculated the timeline and confirmed that he likely hadn't been involved in their deaths. He stayed silent as Conan continued. When her parents left, they had no one to protect their home. The village leader, Hanzo, demanded more and more from the people, leaving orphans like Conan with nothing. Her parents' house was stolen, their possessions ransacked. There had been no official word of their deaths, and no pension was given to her. Left completely alone, Conan had been forced to fend for herself. Most of the time, she hid in a small cave outside the village, only coming into town to steal food when she had no other choice. She had witnessed the worst of humanity in these times, and as a result, she had learned to avoid people, especially men. But now, sitting here, she had met someone entirely different. Someone who, despite everything, didn't make her feel afraid. I heard food was being given out, so I came to check. Conan admitted. I thought I'd leave empty-handed, but I met you instead. She glanced at him from under her lashes. You're really kind. And you're also really handsome. Her last words were so soft that she wasn't sure if he even heard them. Shin smirked slightly but let her words slide. I just do what I want. He replied nonchalantly. When Conan learned that he was from Hidden Leaf Village, her reaction was surprising. Wait. Are you the legendary Leaf's Flash? Shin choked on his food, his face turning slightly red. Ugh. Don't call me that. That's embarrassing. Seeing him flustered for the first time, Conan giggled softly. At that moment, the storm outside seemed just a little less harsh. Chapter 46, Conan, 3. Seeing Shin Uchiha's expression, Conan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hehehe, I feel like, Shin Uchiha-sama, you're different from what the rumors say. Of course, those are just rumors. Shin Uchiha waved his hand dismissively, regaining his composure. Raising an eyebrow, he asked, I'm from Hidden Leaf Village. Aren't you afraid, Conan? Hearing him mention this, Conan thought for a moment before shaking her head. Because I think you're not a bad person, big brother. And besides, we were the ones who started this war. Having grown up in the midst of chaos, Conan understood the nature of conflict. If she had to place blame, her hatred was directed at Hanzo of the Salamander, the man who had initiated the war. Her parents had likely been casualties of battle, possibly during the skirmishes with the Iron Country. So when she learned that the infamous Hidden Leaf Village Thunder God, the man who had killed Hanzo, was standing before her, she felt something unexpected, gratitude. Looking at the perceptive young girl before him, Shin Uchiha felt a rare sense of admiration. To think independently at such a young age. She must have endured more than most. After finishing their meal, Conan fidgeted, looking uneasy. Eventually, she stood up, bowed her head, and said, Thank you, big brother, for the food. I won't trouble you any longer. Conan. Just as she was about to leave, Shinichi called out, his voice firm. She immediately froze in place, her body tensing up. You should stay here for a while. If you leave now, you have nowhere to go, right? But wouldn't that be too much trouble for you, big brother? Conan hesitated, her gaze drifting around the house. Her lips pressed together, betraying her longing. She wanted to stay. Her cold, damp cave was nothing compared to this warm, comfortable shelter. Understanding her hesitation, Shinichi smirked. I'll be staying here for a few more days. It's tiring to distribute food alone. You can help, can't you? He paused before adding, and besides, there's something else I need your help with. Conan's eyes lit up with curiosity. What is it? If she could help him, she wouldn't feel like a burden. I'm looking for someone, a boy with red hair. You've been around here a long time. Have you seen anyone like that? Shinichi described the appearance of the person he was searching for. A descendant of the Uzumaki clan, his target would have vibrant red hair. Conan fell into deep thought. She tried to recall the people she had encountered but couldn't remember seeing a boy matching that description. I haven't seen anyone like that, she admitted. But I know where children like him might be.